The atmospheric pressure in the alleyway dropped by 40 millibars in a single microsecond. There was no thunderclap, not initially. The displacement of air was so absolute, so violent, that the sound barrier didn't just break, it was pulverized into a frequency dog whistles would find agonizing. A blue streak, blurring the visible spectrum, coalesced into solid matter against a brick wall. Sonic the Hedgehog did not land. He ceased momentum. The kinetic energy transfer should have shattered his skeletal structure and liquefied his internal organs. Instead, his unique physiology, a hyper-metabolic engine evolved for friction negation, simply absorbed the impact. His sneakers, reinforced with a polymer unknown to this dimension's periodic table, smoked gently against the damp asphalt of Musutafu. He blinked. The action took him 0.05 seconds. In that time frame, his brain processed the unfamiliar constellations obscured by light pollution, the distinct lack of loop-de-loops in the architecture, and the smell. It wasn't the clean ozone of Green Hill or the smog of the egg carrier. It smelled of rain, burnt sugar, and anxiety. "Okay," he muttered. The word hung in the air, the sound waves moving sluggishly compared to his thoughts. Definitely not Kansas. Definitely not Station Square. He stretched a quill. It gave a metallic ping. His heart rate, resting at a comfortable 40 beats per minute, began to climb as adrenaline flooded his system, not from fear, but from the instinctive realization that the local physics were slightly heavier. The gravity pulled at his spines with a grim insistence. Boom! The delayed sonic boom from his arrival finally caught up, shattering the windows of the adjacent abandoned office building. Glass rained down like diamond dust. Sonic was already gone. Izuku Midoriya was vibrating. It was a condition he was accustomed to, the hum of one for all beneath his skin, the nervous energy of patrol duty. He stood atop a 4-story commercial complex in the shopping district, his green cowl pulled low. Beside him, Uraviti, Ochako Uraraka, was scanning the street below, her fingertips pressed together to mitigate the nausea of a recent float. "It's quiet," Uraraka whispered. "Too quiet." "Statistically, villain incidents spike on Thursday evenings," Deku muttered, his hand drifting to the notebook in his utility pouch. "The shift in patrol rotations usually leaves a 3-minute gap in Sector 4. If I were a villain utilizing a stealth-based quirk, I would..." The air in front of them distorted. It wasn't a visual hallucination. The light itself bent, refracted by a heat haze that hadn't been there a nanosecond prior. A gust of wind, concentrated and razor-sharp, slammed into them. It wasn't a gentle breeze. It was the shock wave of a projectile moving at Mach 1. Deku's danger sense, the fourth user's gift, didn't trigger. It shrieked. It was a monolithic spike of warning that dropped him to his knees, clutching his head. "Deku!" Uraviti shouted, reaching for him. "Something's here!" Deku gasped, his eyes darting frantically. Fast. Faster than Ida. Faster than anything. Down on the street, the traffic lights turned red. A villain, a man composed of shifting, jagged basalt plates, had just thrown a commuter bus. The vehicle tumbled through the air, a lethal projectile aimed squarely at a crowd of civilians frozen in the crosswalk. The physics of the situation were absolute. The bus weighed 12 tons. Its arc was determined by gravity and momentum. The civilians had 1.2 seconds to live. Time seemed to throttle down. To the civilians, death was a shadow blocking out the neon lights. To Izuku Midoriya, leaping from the roof, it was a tragedy he couldn't prevent. Even at 20% full cowling, the distance was too great. To the blue blur, it was Tuesday. Sonic perceived the falling bus as a stationary object suspended in a gelatinous medium. He moved through the frozen tableau of the city street. The world was silent to him in this state. Sound could not keep pace with his legs. He saw the terrified widening of a child's eyes in the crosswalk, the dilation of the pupil, the tear duct beginning to swell. He calculated the vector. If he hit the bus directly, the impact would shred the metal, turning it into shrapnel that would kill the bystanders anyway. He needed torque. He needed rotational force. Sonic curled. He became a sphere of azure violence. The friction of his quills against the air ignited the oxygen molecules around him, creating a corona of blue fire. He didn't hit the bus, he rolled under it. He created a localized cyclone, an updraft of such ferocity that it rewrote the weather patterns of the intersection. The vortex caught the 12-ton vehicle. Whoosh! For the bystanders, the bus didn't hit them. It vanished. It reappeared 300 feet in the air, spinning harmlessly, before crashing onto the roof of the villain's own hideout across the street. Sonic uncurled, his red sneakers skidding to a halt in the center of the intersection. The friction melted the tarmac into black glass beneath his feet. He dusted off his hands, a look of casual boredom plastered across his muzzle. The basalt villain stood frozen, his rocky arms still extended in the follow-through of the throw. He blinked, his geological brain struggling to comprehend the missing bus. "Hey, Rockhead!" The voice was nasally, confident, and dripping with an arrogance that felt earned. The villain looked down. The creature standing there was 3 feet 3 inches tall. It had oversized head spines, eyes that were joined in the middle, and stick-thin limbs that shouldn't have been able to support a skeleton, let alone catch a bus. "You dropped something," Sonic quipped, thumbing over his shoulder at the wreckage on the roof. "Want me to go get it back? Or are we skipping straight to the part where you fall down?" Up on the roof, Izuku Midoriya lowered his binoculars, his mouth slightly agape. He was muttering, the words spilling out in a torrent of confused analysis. "Unknown mutation, heteromorphic type. No, wait. The energy output. That blue light wasn't a quirk factor emission. It was static electricity generated by friction. But to generate that much static, he would need to be moving at velocities that would strip skin from bone. His durability must be secondary to his speed. Is it a compression quirk? A kinetic accumulation quirk?" "Deku," Uraviti said, her voice trembling. "Did that hedgehog just talk?" "It's likely a mutation affecting the vocal cords, similar to Principal Nezu, but the dialect is..." Deku zoomed in. Sonic tapped his foot. The tapping broke the sound barrier repeatedly. Crack, crack, crack. "Well?" Sonic asked, crossing his arms. "I'm waiting, and I hate waiting." The basalt villain roared, a sound of grinding stone, and charged. He was slow, painfully, agonizingly slow. To Sonic, the villain was moving through molasses. Sonic yawned. He checked an imaginary watch on his wrist. Too slow. Sonic didn't run. He vanished. He moved into the negative space of the villain's guard. He wasn't aiming to kill, he was aiming to disassemble. He struck the villain's knee joints, elbow joints, and solar plexus in a sequence that took 0.003 seconds. Impact. The villain didn't even feel the hits until he was already collapsing. His rocky armor shattered at the stress points, turning to dust. He hit the ground in a heap of confused geology. Sonic stood atop the villain's unconscious form, striking a pose that was equal parts victory and mockery. "That's a wrap," Sonic said, addressing the stunned crowd. He flashed a thumbs up. "Sonic's the name. Speed's my game." He looked up, his green eyes locking directly onto the rooftop where Deku and Uraviti were hiding. His perception was so sharp he could see the reflection of the streetlights in Deku's binoculars. Sonic winked. Then a sudden realization hit him. His stomach gave a traitorous rumble, loud enough to be picked up by the nearest news helicopter. Right, Sonic sighed, the adrenaline fading. Phase 2, find a chili dog. Phase 3, figure out why the moon looks weird. He blurred again, disappearing into the concrete jungle of Musutafu, leaving behind a baffled population, a broken villain, and a young hero whose notebook was about to run out of pages. The atmospheric wake left by the entity was not merely wind, it was a tunnel of vacuum. Izuku Midoriya pushed One for All to 45%. Green lightning crackled around his limbs, tearing at the fabric of his gym uniform. He vaulted across the gaps between buildings, black whips shooting out like jagged obsidian tendrils to grapple onto water towers and ventilation units. He swung, released, and fired air bullets to correct his trajectory. He was moving at speeds that would blur a normal civilian's vision. To himself, he felt sluggish. The blue trail ahead of him was dissipating, but the evidence of its passage remained. Storefront awnings were shredded. Pigeons were still tumbling mid-air, caught in the turbulent flow. A street sign had been spun around so violently the metal pole had corkscrewed. "Deku, wait!" Uraraka's voice crackled in his comms, breathless. "HQ says, unknown signature. No match in the Quirk registry. They're deploying Kamui Woods and Mount. Lady to Sector 4. "He's not attacking," Deku panted into the mic, his eyes watering from the wind shear. "He's just browsing." It was true, the trail wasn't linear. It zigzagged. It went up the side of a skyscraper, did a loop around the radio antenna, and then crashed back down to street level. It was the movement pattern of a hyperactive child given godlike velocity. Midoriya skidded to a halt on the edge of a rooftop overlooking a 7-Eleven. His iron soles sparked against the concrete. There, the creature was standing in front of the sliding glass doors. The automatic sensor, designed for human walking speeds, was having a mechanical seizure, opening and closing rapidly as the hedgehog vibrated with impatience. Sonic tapped his foot. The rhythm was a complex polyrhythm, 180 beats per minute. "Come on," he muttered to the glass doors. "Open, shut, open, shut. Pick a lane, buddy." He phased through the closing gap, moving fast enough that the sensors didn't register the intrusion until he was already standing in the aisle labeled Hot Foods. The fluorescent lights hummed with a frequency that irritated his ears. He scanned the heated display case. Fried chicken, steamed buns, yakitori, no chili dogs. "Tragic," Sonic whispered. He leaned against the counter. The clerk, a teenager with a mutation that gave him a beak, stared at Sonic. The boy's eyes were wide, his brain attempting to process the blue bipedal mammal leaning casually against the register. "Yo!" Sonic said, pointing a gloved finger at a corn dog. It's meat on a stick. Close enough. How much?" The clerk stammered. 200 yen. Sonic reached into his quills, a subspace pocket dimension inherent to his biology, and pulled out a gold ring. It was the size of a dinner plate, rotating slowly, humming with chaotic energy. He slammed it onto the counter. The heavy gold dented the laminate surface. "Keep the change," Sonic said. "Sir, Freeze!" The shout came from the doorway. Sonic didn't turn around immediately. He grabbed the corn dog, took a bite, chewed, swallowed, and analyzed the flavor profile. Too much breading, insufficient spice, before pivoting on his heel. A green-haired human stood in the doorway. He was glowing, literally glowing. Arcs of electricity danced around him, and black tendrils floated ominously from his back. He looked like a walking special effect. Sonic swallowed the rest of the corn dog in one gulp. "Glowing kid," Sonic noted. "Nice light show. You come with a dimmer switch?" Izuku Midoriya stepped forward, his stance wide, prepared for immediate combat. His analysis mode was in overdrive. Target is relaxed. Center of gravity is high. Legs are disproportionately long for the torso. No visible weapons, but the quills are likely sharp enough to pierce carbon fiber. "I am the hero Deku," Izuku announced, his voice steady but tense. "You just used an unauthorized quirk in a public space, caused significant property damage, and assaulted a villain without a license. Under the Article 4 of the Hero Public Safety Act, I need you to surrender." Sonic cleaned his teeth with his tongue. He looked at the ring on the counter, then back at Deku. "Hero Public Safety Act?" Sonic asked, tilting his head. "Sounds boring." "Look, Greenie, I'm just passing through. I took out the rock guy because he was being a jerk. You're welcome, by the way." "We have laws," Deku insisted. Black Whip pulse, the tendrils expanding to block the exit. "We can't just have people running around at max speeds." Sonic laughed. It was a sharp, barking sound. "Mach speeds?" Sonic smirked, his eyelids lowering. "Kid, if I was only going Mach 1, I'd fall asleep." The air pressure in the convenience store shifted. The magazines in the rack fluttered. "Don't," Deku warned, crouching low. "I don't want to fight you." "Good choice," Sonic said. Then the world turned blue. Sonic didn't attack Deku. He moved around him. To Deku, it felt like a hurricane had spawned inside the 7-Eleven. The aisles rattled. Bags of chips exploded from the pressure drop. Deku instinctively shielded his face, his danger sense blaring a generic warning of high turbulence. When Deku opened his eyes, he was standing outside the store. He hadn't walked out. He hadn't been thrown. Sonic had dismantled the sliding doors, moved Deku outside, reassembled the sliding doors, slightly crookedly, and placed the half-eaten stick of the corn dog in Deku's hand. Sonic was standing on top of a lamppost 20 feet above him, balancing on one toe. "You're slow," Sonic called down, crossing his arms. "But you've got heart. I like heart." Sirens wailed in the distance. The heavy, rhythmic thud of a giant approaching signaled Mount Lady's arrival. "Looks like the party's getting crowded," Sonic said, glancing at the horizon. He looked back at Deku. "Hey, Lightning Boy, where's the biggest, smartest guy in charge around here? I need to ask some questions about geography." Deku stared at the corn dog stick in his hand, then up at the hedgehog. The speed gap was insurmountable. Physical capture was impossible. Negotiation was the only path. "UA High School," Deku shouted over the wind. "Go to UA High School. Ask for Principal Nezu." Sonic grinned. "UA got it. Race you there?" Sonic stepped off the lamppost. He didn't fall. He accelerated downward, hit the street, and converted the vertical momentum into horizontal drive. Boom! The sound barrier shattered again, blowing Deku's cowl back and setting off every car alarm on the block. By the time the dust settled, the blue streak was already a mile away, weaving through traffic like a needle through fabric. Deku tapped his comms, his hands shaking slightly. "Uraraka, call Mr. Aizawa. Tell him something faster than All Might is heading for the campus." The data stream in the subterranean laboratory of Dr. Kyudai Garaki did not buffer. It hemorrhaged. Screens lining the walls of the dark facility illuminated the vat-grown horrors suspended in formaldehyde. The doctor, a man whose existence was sustained more by science than soul, adjusted his goggles. His trembling fingers danced across a haptic keyboard. "Fascinating," Garaki rasped. "Impossible, but fascinating." On the main monitor, grainy satellite footage from a KH-11 reconnaissance orbiter tracked a blue thermal anomaly tearing through District 4. The telemetry was nonsensical. The object was accelerating past terminal velocity while maintaining a surface temperature of only 40 degrees Celsius. It defied thermodynamics. If a human moved that fast, the friction would turn them into plasma. It generates a localized protective field, Shigaraki muttered, his scientific greed eclipsing his caution. Or perhaps its biology naturally negates drag coefficient. In the shadows behind the chair, a figure shifted. The air grew heavy, smelling of dust and decay. Tamura Shigaraki sat on a crate, scratching the scar tissue on his neck. The sound was dry and rhythmic. Scritch! Scritch! It's loud, Shigaraki whispered. His voice was a dry riverbed. The news won't shut up about it. Faster than all might. I hate that phrase. It is not a quirk, Shigaraki. Shigaraki turned, his eyes gleaming with madness. The genetic markers are absent. This is a cryptid, an apex predator from an isolated evolutionary branch. Imagine if we could harvest that motility. Shigaraki stopped scratching. One red eye peered through the gloom. Harvest, Shigaraki repeated. He smiled and the skin around his mouth cracked. I like that. If it's faster than all might, then breaking it will send a message. A very fast message. Shall I deploy the high ends? Shigaraki asked, his hand hovering over a red switch. Send near, Shigaraki commanded. He needs a test drive. If the rat is hiding this blue thing at UA, we need to intercept it before it gets behind the barrier. Sonic was bored. He was currently vibrating at a casual 700 miles per hour, cruising down the center lane of the Tokyo Bay Aqualine Expressway. Cars appeared to be parked. The ocean water in the tunnel overhead was a stationary sculpture of blue glass. Left at the big tower, Green Kid said. Sonic mused, dodging a frozen semi-truck. Or was it right? Why is every building in this city a tower? He skidded around a curve, banking off the tunnel wall. His sneakers left a trail of glowing blue embers that hissed as they cooled. Suddenly, his ears swiveled. A distinct sound cut through the roar of the wind. It wasn't the siren of the police cars he had left miles behind. It was a wet, tearing sound, like meat being pulled apart. Danger. Sonic didn't stop. He simply ceased to be in his previous location. He sidestepped 3 feet to the left. A split second later, a spear of calcified bone erupted from the asphalt where he had just been running. The force of the impact blew a crater in the road, collapsing the tunnel ceiling. Seawater began to spray in, high-pressure jets cutting through the air. Sonic backflipped, landing on a guardrail. Whoa! Sonic whistled, balancing on one foot. Potholes are getting aggressive around here. Standing amidst the falling debris was a creature that looked like a nightmare drawn by a terrified child. It stood 8 feet tall, its skin a dark purple, its brain exposed in a glass dome. It had 6 arms, each ending in a different weapon. Bone drills, muscle fibers, claws. The high-end Nomu known as Near. The creature didn't roar, it didn't monologue. It swiveled its exposed brain towards Sonic. Blue, the Nomu gurgled. Acquire. Blue. Name's Sonic, he corrected, tapping his chest. And you're ugly. Seriously, who does your exfoliating? A belt sander? The Nomu's back muscles coiled. It triggered a pump-up quirk combined with spring-like limbs. It launched. For the first time since arriving, Sonic had to actually look. The creature was fast. Not Sonic fast, but faster than sound. It closed the distance in a blink, swinging a massive, muscular fist aimed at Sonic's head. Sonic ducked. The wind pressure from the punch sheared the guardrail in half. Okay, you've got some zip, Sonic laughed, revving up his legs. Let's dance, brain case. Sonic engaged. He became a buzzsaw. He slammed into the Nomu's chest, delivering a homing attack that carried the force of a wrecking ball. Thwack! The Nomu was launched backward, crashing through a sedan and embedding itself in the tunnel wall. Sonic landed, brushing dust off his shoulder. Strike one! But the Nomu didn't stay down. The crater in its chest where Sonic had impacted began to bubble. Flesh knitted together, bones snapped back into place. Super regeneration. The creature pulled itself out of the wall. It grew 2 new arms from its shoulders. Regeneration? Sonic's eyes narrowed. That's cheating. I hate cheaters. Capture! The Nomu screeched. From its back, 6 winged projectiles detached, tracking pests. They were smaller bioengineered monsters, flying screaming missiles that locked onto Sonic's heat signature. Sonic grinned. Now it's a party. He took off. The tunnel became a kaleidoscope of violence. Sonic ran along the ceiling, dodging the explosive pests. He spin-dashed through the water geysers, turning the spray into mist. The Nomu pursued, tearing up the road, throwing cars like baseballs. Sonic needed to end this, but he couldn't go full speed in a tunnel without risking a collapse that would drown the civilians stuck in the parked cars. He was handicapped by his own power. Gotta take this outside, Sonic decided. He spotted the tunnel exit ahead, a circle of blinding daylight. Hey, ugly! Sonic shouted, stopping for a microsecond to ensure the Nomu was looking. He blew a raspberry. Catch me if you can! Sonic hit the turbo. He broke the sound barrier inside the tunnel. The pressure wave knocked the Nomu flat, but the creature scrambled up, enraged, and sprinted after him into the sunlight. They burst out of the tunnel and onto the suspension bridge. Waiting for them wasn't just open air. It was the JSDF. 3 attack helicopters hovered in formation, Gatling guns spun up. On the bridge deck, a blockade of armored vehicles stood ready. And standing on top of the lead tank was a man with engines in his calves, exhaust pipes revving smoke. Tenya Ida, the turbo hero Ingenium. Ida adjusted his glasses, his face stern. He saw the blue blur. He saw the monstrous Nomu pursuing it. Target identified, Ida shouted into his comms. The unidentified speedster is leading a villain toward the blockade, engaging in intercept maneuvers. Recipro, burst. Ida's engines roared blue fire. He shot forward, a silver bullet aiming to cut off Sonic's path. Sonic saw the new challenger, a guy in armor with mufflers on his legs. Seriously? Sonic sighed, watching Ida approach in slow motion. Do you guys have a convention today or something? Sonic was now boxed in, the regenerating monster behind him, the engine-kicking hero in front of him, and the ocean below. Sonic smirked. He grabbed a loose bolt from the bridge plating and flipped it like a coin. Time to scramble the signal. The concept of speed is relative. To the average civilian, Tenya Ida's recipro burst is teleportation. It is the violent conversion of fuel into kinetic force, stripping the gears of reality to achieve subsonic velocity in a heartbeat. To Sonic the Hedgehog, Ida was a statue moving on a conveyor belt. Sonic watched the armored boy approach. He analyzed the mechanics of the engine quirk in real time. Pistons in the gastrocnemius, exhaust vents in the soleus. He runs stiff. Too much vertical oscillation. He's fighting the air instead of cutting it. Ida's armored legs swept out, a high-speed roundhouse kick calculated to disable. Sonic didn't dodge. He simply occupied the space where Ida's leg wasn't. Your form is terrible, Sonic shouted, his voice matching Ida's frequency to be heard over the engine roar. Sonic spun. He used the loose bridge bolt he'd picked up earlier. As Ida flew past, carried by his own immense momentum, Sonic gently tapped the exhaust port on Ida's right calf with the bolt. Clink. The tiny impact, applied at precisely the right vector, disrupted the aerodynamic flow of the exhaust. Ida's trajectory wobbled. The turbo hero spun out, his traction control failing against the laws of physics Sonic was currently rewriting. Ida skidded sideways, his metal boots carving deep trenches into the bridge deck, sparks flying like a welder's torch. "Stabilizers offline," Ida gasped, fighting the G-force. He destabilized my torque vectoring with a pebble." Before Ida could recover, the sunlight was blotted out. The high-end Nomu, near, had ignored the physics lesson. It dropped from the sky, aiming not for the blue blur it couldn't catch, but for the silver hero who was currently stationary. Its massive, mutated fist, wreathed in bone spurs, descended toward Ida's exposed helmet. Ida's engines were stalled. The cooldown from Recipro burst left him paralyzed for the crucial 1.5 seconds required to die. Crack. The sound wasn't the crushing of Ida's skull. It was the sound of a sonic boom occurring within a 3-foot radius. Sonic was there. He didn't block the punch. He intercepted it with a spin attack. He became a buzzsaw of friction, grinding against the Nomu's knuckles. The collision created a shockwave that blew the windows out of the JSDF helicopters hovering above. "Get up, muffler legs!" Sonic gritted out, the friction heating his quills to white-hot intensity. "I'm not doing this for my health." The Nomu screeched, its regeneration fighting a losing battle against the erosion of Sonic's spines. It retracted its hand, confused by the pain. Sonic landed in a crouch in front of Ida. The hedgehog's sneakers were smoking. "You heroes are all the same," Sonic quipped, dusting off his hands. "Run first, ask questions later. You gotta learn to flow, kid. Be like water." Sonic looked over the edge of the bridge. The ocean churned hundreds of feet below. "Speaking of water," Sonic grinned. He jumped. "Wait!" Ida reached out, but he was grasping at an afterimage. Sonic plummeted toward the Tokyo Bay. He didn't splash. He hit the water surface at an angle so shallow and a speed so high that surface tension acted like concrete. He ran on the waves. He began to circle the bridge piling. Faster, faster. A whirlpool formed, then a cyclone. Sonic was generating a localized typhoon, drawing millions of gallons of seawater upward into a spiraling column of aquatic violence. "Surf's up!" Sonic broke the circle, launching the column of water directly at the bridge. But he wasn't aiming for the structure, he was aiming for the Nomu. The hydro cannon hit near with the pressure of a deep-sea trench. The Nomu was blasted off the bridge, carried away by a literal tidal wave, skipping across the ocean's surface like a flat stone until it vanished into the horizon, miles away. Sonic landed back on the bridge railing, dripping wet but shaking himself dry in a nanosecond, creating a momentary cloud of steam. He looked at Ida, who was trembling, his engine smoking. "Work on your cardio," Sonic advised, pointing a finger at the hero. "And maybe loosen up the hips. You run like a robot." "Who? What are you?" Ida stammered, his worldview shattering. "Just a guy who loves chili dogs," Sonic winked. He turned toward the mainland. The GPS coordinates Deku had given him were locked in his mind. Boom! He was gone. UA High School, the principal's office. Nezu poured tea. The stream of Earl Grey was perfectly laminar. The Chimera sat comfortably in his oversized chair, watching the live feed from the bridge on a tablet propped against his sugar bowl. "Fascinating," Nezu chirped. "Kinetic manipulation, friction negotiation, and a distinct lack of malice." "He's heading here," Aizawa, Eraserhead said, standing in the corner, his capture weapon loose around his neck. He looked more tired than usual. "The sensors estimate arrival in 30 seconds. I'll head to the gate. I'll erase his quirk the moment he steps on campus." "I wouldn't bother, Aizawa-kun." Nezu took a sip. "Midoriya's analysis was astute. That creature isn't using a quirk. You can't erase biology." Then the UA barrier will stop him, Aizawa grunted. The multi-layered hardened steel plates are active. Nothing gets through that without an ID card. Knock, knock. The sound came from the inside of the office door. Aizawa stiffened, his hair rising, eyes flashing red. He spun around. The heavy steel door to the principal's office, secured by a biometric lock and 3 inches of titanium, was still closed. But leaning against the frame, on the inside, was a blue hedgehog. He was holding a cup of tea, Nezu's cup of tea, which Nezu had been holding a millisecond ago. Nice security system, Sonic said, taking a sip and grimacing. Needs more sugar. Also, your wall has a weird vibration frequency. Had to vibrate my molecules to phase through it. Kinda tickles. Sonic set the cup down on the desk. So, Sonic sat on the edge of the desk, swinging his legs. You're the mouse bear dog guy. Deku said you were smart. Nezu didn't flinch. His scar twitched in what might have been a smile. He folded his paws. And you are Sonic, Nezu said calmly. Welcome to UA High. I believe we have much to discuss, specifically about the dimensional rift signature currently decaying in your wake. Aizawa stood frozen. He hadn't seen the movement. He hadn't blinked. The creature had just appeared. Yeah, about that, Sonic scratched his ear. I think I took a wrong turn at the chaos control. And now I've got a rock monster trying to glue me back together and a guy with engines for legs trying to give me a speeding ticket. Can a guy get a break? We can offer sanctuary, Nezu proposed, his eyes gleaming with calculating intelligence, in exchange for data and perhaps a guest lecture on Physics Evasion 101? Sonic smirked. Deal. But first, tell me you have a cafeteria. At this precise moment, the viewer's thumb hovers exactly 2 millimeters above the screen. To the untrained eye, this is mere hesitation. However, on a neurological level, a violent conflict is taking place within the prefrontal cortex. The viewer is currently processing the auditory data stream, a synthetic voice so optimized for narrative delivery that it bypasses standard skepticism and stimulates the imagination directly. The dopamine receptors are firing. The immersion is absolute. Yet a fatal error in logic is about to occur. The viewer operates under the assumption that the algorithm will naturally return them to this channel. This is a statistical miscalculation. Without the tactile confirmation of the subscribe function, the probability of retrieving this specific narrative frequency drops by 84.7% within the next 48 hours. The creator, dependent on this metric to fuel the AI generation engine, waits in a state of suspended anticipation. There are 2 distinct timelines ahead. In the first, the viewer scrolls away. The story ends here, lost to the entropic chaos of the feed. In the second, the viewer exerts a mere 0.5 newtons of force. The connection is solidified. The production of future chapters is guaranteed. The choice is not merely about support, it is a tactical decision to ensure the survival of the story itself. Do not hesitate. Correct the timeline. Subscribe. Back to the story. Erasure, Aizawa whispered. His hair defied gravity, floating in a halo of intimidation. His eyes glowed blood red, cutting off the genetic pathways of quirk factors within his line of sight. It was a power that had stopped villains capable of leveling cities. Sonic blinked. He took another sip of tea. You've got something in your eye, Sonic noted, pointing a gloved finger. Is it allergies? The pollen count is high today. I saw a lot of cedar trees on the way in. Well, I saw a blur of green, but I assumed they were cedars. Aizawa blinked. His hair fell flat. The dry eye symptoms set in immediately. The stinging sensation of cornea desiccation. It didn't work, Aizawa stated, the fatigue in his voice deepening. No quirk factor. He's completely biological. As I suspected, Nezu placed his teacup down with a delicate clink. Mr. Sonic is a phylogenetic anomaly, an organism evolved for high-velocity traversal. Trying to erase his speed would be like trying to erase a bird's ability to fly by looking at it. It is structural, not supernatural. Sonic hopped off the desk. He stretched, a series of pops echoing from his spine. "So, about that food?" Sonic asked, rubbing his stomach. "I run on a high-octane mix of carbohydrates and attitude, mostly carbs. Lunch Rush is currently prepping for the student influx." Nezu gestured to the door. "Eraserhead will escort you. Consider yourself a transfer student for the day. Classification, visiting specialist." The cafeteria. The ambient noise level was 85 decibels. The smell was a chaotic mix of curry, udon, and teenage hormones. Sonic stood at the front of the line. Lunch Rush, the culinary hero, was a blur of motion, serving ladles of rice. But to Sonic, Lunch Rush was moving in slow motion. "I'll take 50, Sonic said. "50 what?" Lunch Rush asked, pausing mid-scoop. "Yes," Sonic replied. In the time it took Lunch Rush to process the request, Sonic had already moved behind the counter. He moved like a ghost. Trays vanished. Pots were emptied. Sonic reappeared at a vacant table in the center of the room. A tower of chili dogs, Lunch Rush's attempt at American comfort food, stood precariously high. Chomp, swallow, chomp, swallow. The caloric intake was staggering. Sonic's metabolism was a thermonuclear furnace. He consumed 10,000 calories in 12 seconds. The heat radiating from his body raised the local temperature of the table by 3 degrees. The doors to the cafeteria slid open. Class 1A entered, led by a still-shaken Tenya Ida. "That's him!" Ida pointed, his arm rigid. "The intruder! He is eating everything!" The class froze. They saw the blue hedgehog leaning back in his chair, feet on the table, tossing a chili dog into the air and catching it in his mouth. "That's the guy," Kaminari whispered. "He looks like a plushie." "A plushie that broke the sound barrier inside a tunnel," Ida corrected grimly. Katsuki Bakugo shoved past Midoriya. His palms popped with nitroglycerin sweat. Small explosions crackled. Pop, 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 mirroring his irritation. "Oi!" Bakugo marched toward the table. "You're the extra that made Four Eyes look bad?" Sonic didn't look up. He was inspecting a smudge of mustard on his glove. "You're loud," Sonic said. "And you smell like burnt sugar. Is that a cologne?" Bakugo's eye twitched. The vein in his forehead pulsed. "I'm going to turn you into roadkill, you blue rat!" Bakugo lunged. He led with a right hook, triggering a massive explosion aimed directly at Sonic's face. It was a lethal strike, fast and violent. Boom! Smoke filled the cafeteria. Students screamed. Kirishima hardened his arms instinctively. "Kachan!" Deku shouted. The smoke cleared. Bakugo's hand was extended, smoke curling from his palm. He was hitting nothing but air. "Too slow," a voice whispered directly into Bakugo's ear. Bakugo spun around. Sonic was sitting on Bakugo's shoulders, casually eating the last bite of a chili dog. "Get off me!" Bakugo roared, sparking his left hand to blast his own shoulder. Sonic backflipped off, landing lightly on the floor. He held up a small metallic pin. "Looking for this?" Sonic tossed the pin in the air. Bakugo looked at his grenadier gauntlet. The safety pin was gone. The mechanism was armed. You telegraph your moves," Sonic lectured, wagging a finger. "You wind up too much, and your weight distribution is terrible when you get angry. You're all torque, no traction." Bakugo was vibrating with rage, but Midoriya stepped in, grabbing Bakugo's arm. "Kachan, stop! He took the pin before you even ignited the sweat. If he wanted to hurt you, he could have disassembled him. Shoto Todoroki finished the sentence, walking up with a tray of cold soba. Like a Lego set. Sonic looked at Todoroki. Two-tone hair. Cool look, literally. Suddenly, Sonic stiffened. His ears swiveled forward. The playful demeanor evaporated instantly. His pupils dilated, focusing on something beyond the walls of the cafeteria, beyond the school. A low hum resonated in his chest. It was a frequency only he could feel, a chaotic, harmonious energy signature. "No way," Sonic whispered. He reached into his quills, the subspace pocket, and pulled out a gem. It was a Chaos Emerald, the green one. It was pulsing. "It's reacting," Sonic murmured. "That means there's another one here." The emerald glowed brighter, casting an eerie green light over the stunned students of Class 1A. The energy coming off the small gem felt heavier than gravity. It felt like potential. "Hey, Greenie," Sonic looked at Deku. "You know this town. Is there any place nearby that smells like ozone or weird energy? Or maybe just a giant evil lair?" Deku pulled out his notebook. "There's the USJ facility or the Tartarus prison. But why?" "Because..." Sonic tossed the emerald and caught it. "I just found my ticket home, but I think someone else found it first. Somewhere in the Musutafu Industrial District." Tamura Shigaraki held the object in his hand. It was a gem, cut in a diamond shape, glowing with a malevolent red light. It had fallen from the sky during the atmospheric disturbance caused by the blue creature's arrival. "It's warm," Shigaraki whispered. He touched it with 5 fingers. It did not decay. His quirk, decay, which turned flesh and steel to dust, washed over the red gem and did nothing. The gem seemed to laugh at the concept of entropy. Instead, power surged up Shigaraki's arm. Purple lightning crackled around his body, mixing with the red glow. "Doctor," Shigaraki's voice distorted, sounding like 2 voices speaking in unison. "I don't think we need the Nomu anymore." Dr. Garaki stared at the readings. The energy output of the gem in Shigaraki's hand was spiking to infinity. "It's an infinite power source," Garaki gasped. "If we integrate that into the warp gate..." "No!" Shigaraki clenched his fist around the Chaos Emerald. "I'm going to use it to crush the symbol of peace, and the rat, and the blue blur." He looked at the monitor showing UA High. "Kurogiri, open a portal directly to the UA cafeteria. I want to see what this rock can really do." The frequency of the air in the UA cafeteria shifted from the chaotic din of adolescence to a terrifying, static silence. The oscillation was 22,000 hertz, just above the threshold of human hearing, causing 23 distinct migraines to manifest simultaneously among the student body. The green Chaos Emerald in Sonic's hand did not just glow, it screamed. The light it emitted wasn't photonic, it was a ripple in the localized space-time manifold. "Get down," Sonic said. His voice lacked its usual bravado. It was flat, commanded by the experience of 1,000 planetary crisis events. Space tore open. It wasn't the fluid, smoky expansion of Kurogiri's warp gate. This was a violent rupture. The fabric of reality in the center of the cafeteria shrieked as it was forcibly vivisected. Purple mist mixed with jagged red lightning. An electrical discharge caused by the friction of 2 dimensions grinding against each other. The rupture expanded to a diameter of 2 meters in 0.04 seconds. From the void, a hand emerged. The skin was pale, dry, and terrifyingly familiar to Izuku Midoriya. But the palm wasn't empty. Clutched in the center, fusing with the decaying flesh, was the red Chaos Emerald. Tamura Shigaraki stepped onto the linoleum floor. The presence of the red emerald distorted the visual field around him. Light bent away from his silhouette, as if the photons themselves were terrified of touching him. The decay effect was no longer contact-based, it was radiating. The nearest table, 3 meters away, turned to gray dust instantly. The steel legs disintegrated into iron filings. "It's clearer," Shigaraki rasped. His eyes were wide, the pupils dilated to the point of eclipsing the iris. The red emerald pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. "Everything is so fragile." "Villain!" Ida shouted, his engines revving instinctively despite the terror seizing his spinal column. "Everyone, evacuate! Formation Delta!" "Stay back!" Deku screamed, his danger sense driving a spike of agony into his skull, so intense he nearly vomited. "Don't touch the air around him." Shigaraki looked at Sonic. He looked at the green emerald. "A matching set," Shigaraki smiled. The skin at the corners of his mouth turned to ash and flaked away. "Give it to me, rat. I want to see what happens when I hold two." Shigaraki raised his hand. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. He simply willed the destruction. He channeled the chaotic energy through his quirk. Chaos decay. A wave of red-black energy erupted from his palm. It wasn't a projectile. It was an erasure event. It propagated forward at the speed of thought, a cone of absolute entropy designed to reduce the entire cafeteria, and everyone in it, to subatomic particles. Time stopped. Or rather, Sonic decided that time was no longer relevant. To Sonic, the wave of death was moving. It was crawling through the air, eating the oxygen molecules, turning the nitrogen into void. It was fast. Faster than a bullet, faster than sound, but not faster than him. Sonic looked at the students. Midoriya was mid-step, his face a mask of horror. Uraraka was reaching for her debris. Bakugo was igniting a spark that would never detonate in time. There were 142 students in the blast zone. Sonic tapped into the green emerald. Chaos! The emerald flared. Sonic's body became a conduit for infinite energy. His blue fur stood on end, turning a shimmering metallic cyan. Control! The laws of physics in the cafeteria were suspended. The expansion of the decay wave froze. Not slowed, froze. The red energy hung in the air like a grotesque sculpture of blood and lightning. Sonic moved. He didn't run, he translocated. He was everywhere at once. He grabbed Midoriya and Uraraka, depositing them in the hallway. Crack. The sound of air rushing to fill the vacuum where they had been. He grabbed Bakugo, Kirishima, and Kaminari. Crack. He cleared Table 4, Table 5, the support course students, the lunch ladies. He moved 142 people in 0.000001 seconds. The friction was non-existent because he wrapped each passenger in a thin veil of chaos energy, protecting them from the G-force that would have otherwise liquefied their brains. Sonic returned to the center of the room, standing directly in front of the frozen wave of decay. He snapped his fingers. Time resumed. Roar. The decay wave slammed into the far wall, which was now empty. The concrete, the steel beams, the windows, they didn't break. They vanished. A hole perfectly circular and 50 feet wide was punched through the side of the UA main building, revealing the terrified sky outside. Shigaraki blinked. The cafeteria was empty. The students were gone. Only the blue hedgehog remained, standing on a table that was rapidly turning to dust beneath his sneakers. "You cheated," Shigaraki whispered. His anger wasn't hot. It was cold and absolute. The red emerald flared, responding to his rage. The air pressure in the room dropped 40 millibars. "I improvised," Sonic corrected. He tossed the green emerald in the air and caught it. And you're playing with a toy you don't understand, Krusty. That rock isn't a battery, it's a key, and you're trying to use it as a hammer. It works as a hammer, Shigaraki snarled. He vanished. Shigaraki didn't have super speed. He used chaos control, a crude, jagged teleportation. He appeared instantly behind Sonic, 5 fingers outstretched, glowing with red entropy. Sonic backflipped blindly. The tips of his quills grazed Shigaraki's fingers. Hiss. 3 of Sonic's spines turned gray and crumbled to dust. Sonic landed on the ceiling, gravity holding no sway over him, and looked at his damaged quills. Okay. Sonic's eyes narrowed. The playful banter was gone. That actually hurt. I can see you, Shigaraki laughed. He warped again. Above Sonic, below Sonic, to the left. He was spamming the teleportation, creating a cage of rotting touch. Sonic was forced on the defensive. He weaved through the after images. He couldn't attack directly. Touching Shigaraki meant losing a limb, and Shigaraki was now blinking through space instantly, removing the travel time that Sonic usually exploited. Eraserhead! Sonic shouted, not looking away from the villain. Now would be a good time to use that creepy stare of yours. In the shattered doorway, Aizawa lay prone, pinned under a pile of debris from the initial blast. He was conscious, blood trickling from his hairline. He forced his eyes open. He locked onto Shigaraki. Erasure. Shigaraki's hair didn't drop. The decay didn't stop. It's not working, Aizawa choked out. The energy, it's bypassing his quirk factor. He's not using his biology. Chaos energy overrides biological mutation, Sonic muttered, dodging a swipe that disintegrated the ceiling fan. Great, just great. Shigaraki screamed, a sound of pure ecstasy and pain as the emerald burned his palm. He raised both hands. The red emerald levitated between them. Disappear, Shigaraki commanded. The red emerald pulsed. A singularity began to form. A miniature black hole fueled by chaos, pulling everything into a point of infinite crushing gravity and decay. The tables began to slide. The floor tiles ripped up. Sonic dug his heels into the ceiling. He's gonna tank the whole school, Sonic realized. If that thing goes critical, there won't be a Musutafu left. Sonic looked at his green emerald. He had to neutralize the frequency. He had to match the wavelength and invert it. A chaos cancellation. Sonic pushed off the ceiling. He curled into a ball, spinning not for impact, but for frequency generation. The green emerald spun with him, creating a buzzsaw of emerald light. Here goes nothing! Sonic launched himself directly at the singularity. Red met green. Crash. The sound was not audible, it was psychic. Every telepath, animal, and sensitive individual within a 50-mile radius felt a sudden, sharp pressure in their frontal lobe. The explosion of light blinded the cameras. It blinded the heroes. When the whiteout faded, the cafeteria was silent. The singularity was gone. The hole in the wall remained. Sonic stood in the center of a crater, panting heavily. His gloves were singed. Shigaraki was gone. But on the floor where the villain had stood lay a residue, a burning red scorch mark in the shape of a hand. Sonic fell to one knee. He clutched the green emerald to his chest. It was dim, its energy temporarily drained. He warped out, Sonic gasped, wiping soot from his nose. Last second, he realized he couldn't control the output. Deku scrambled over the rubble in the hallway, his costume torn. He ran to Sonic. Sonic, are you? I'm fine. Sonic stood up, though his legs trembled slightly. But we've got a problem, Greenie. Sonic looked at the scorch mark. Your bad guy just leveled up, and if he finds the other 5 emeralds, you're gonna need a lot more than plus ultra to stop him. Sonic looked out the hole in the wall. In the distance, high above the city, a faint yellow twinkle caught his eye, then a blue one to the south. "The scattering," Sonic whispered. "My arrival knocked them all out of orbit. They're all here." He turned to the stunned Class 1A, peering from the hallway. "Class is in session," Sonic announced, his serious face cracking into a determined grin. "Lesson 1, how to save the world in under a minute. Who's got a map?" The silence in the UA faculty meeting room was heavy, composed of equal parts dust, exhaustion, and the smell of ozone radiating from the blue hedgehog sitting at the head of the table. Sonic was spinning in the ergonomic office chair. Not playfully. He was spinning at 400 revolutions per minute, creating a localized centrifuge that was beginning to unscrew the bolts of the chair base. "Stop!" Aizawa said. He didn't look up from his tablet. Sonic stopped instantly. The sudden cessation of momentum caused a gust of wind that scattered Nesu's papers. "You guys talk slow," Sonic complained, leaning his head on the table. "I've already memorized the periodic table of this dimension, counted the ceiling tiles, there are 412 by the way, and mapped out a route to the nearest chili dog stand. Can we get to the part where we save the world?" "We are assessing the threat level," All Might said. The former #1 hero sat in his skeletal form, his sunken eyes fixed on the green chaos emerald resting on the table. The gem was dull, its light fading like a dying coal. "This emerald," All Might continued, his voice grave. "It bypasses Quirks, it grants teleportation, and Shigaraki has one." "He has the red one," Sonic corrected, pointing a gloved finger. "Power source. Makes things go boom. He's got raw output, but he lacks finesse. It's like giving a toddler a rocket launcher." "And you have the green one," Nezu noted, his paws folded. "Which controls time, space?" "Chaos control," Sonic said. "It warps reality. But right now, it's out of juice. I drained it stopping that decay wave. It needs to recharge. Usually I just grab some rings, but your gold here doesn't conduct chaos energy. It's too chemically stable." The door to the meeting room slammed open. "Did someone say unstable power source?" Mei Hatsum did not walk. She vibrated into the room. Her goggles were magnified, her dreadlocks bouncing with manic energy. She zeroed in on the chaos emerald like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Power loader said there was an extra-dimensional battery in here," Hatsumi shrieked, ignoring the pro-heroes. She grabbed the emerald before Sonic could react, which, considering Sonic's reaction time, meant he let her take it. She pulled out a screwdriver and a multimeter. "Wait!" Aizawa stood up. "That's dangerous." "Let her work," Sonic grinned. He watched Hatsume's hands. She moved with a chaotic precision that he appreciated. She's got the look, the mad scientist vibe. "I dig it." Hatsumi touched the probes to the emerald. The multimeter exploded. "Beautiful!" Hatsumi cackled, wiping soot from her face. "Infinite impedance. Zero resistance. It's not electricity. It's a psionic wavelength converted into thermal radiation. If I reverse the polarity on a tracking algorithm," she looked at Sonic, "I can track the others, but I need a receiver." Sonic tapped his nose. "I'm the receiver, but I can't be everywhere. The signal is scattered. We need a radar." "A radar?" Hatsume's eyes turned into dollar signs. "Baby, I can build you a global triangulation network in 10 minutes. Just give me access to the school's satellite uplinks and a blowtorch." 1 hour later, the development studio. The device looked like a heavily modified Nintendo DS taped to a Geiger counter. It was bulky, ugly, and held together by optimism and duct tape. Hatsumi handed it to Midoriya. "The Chaos Radar Mark I," she announced. "It tracks the specific wavelength of the emeralds. I've synced it to the residual energy of the green one." The screen pinged. 7 dots appeared on the digital map of Japan. Green, UA high, current location. Red, unknown, cloak signal, Shigaraki. Yellow, stratosphere, drifting. Blue, Fukuoka district, south. Cyan, Hosu City, urban center. Purple, Tartarus prison, offshore. White, Deka City, mountain region. Sonic whistled. Busy map. Okay, here's the play. I'm going for the cyan one in Hosu. It's the closest. I'm going with you. Ida stepped forward. His armor was repaired, though scratches from the bridge battle remained. Hosu City, that is where my brother was attacked. I know the streets. And I'm going too, Deku added, adjusting his gloves. I need to understand how this energy works. If Shigaraki attacks again... Three's a crowd, Sonic shrugged, stretching his legs. But try to keep up. Wait, Nezu interjected. The blue signal in Fukuoka. That is Endeavor's territory. I will dispatch Shoto Todoroki and Bakugo to intercept. We must secure these assets before the League does. It's a race then, Sonic said. He crouched low. Hey, Blue Blur! Hatsune threw something at him. Sonic caught it. It was a pair of shoes. Not his red sneakers, but metallic boots with jet intakes. Iron soles, Hatsume beamed. Modified to withstand your friction. Your current shoes are melting. Sonic looked at his beloved red sneakers. The soles were indeed worn down to a thin wafer of rubber. He sighed, swapping them for the support gear. They were heavier, but he felt the reinforced plating. Not bad, Sonic tapped the heel. Let's see if they handle the curves. He looked at Deku and Ida. Try not to blink. Hosu City, the back alleys. The city was recovering from the stain incident months prior, but the shadows still felt long. Sonic, Deku, and Ida landed on a rooftop. The trip had taken 40 seconds. Deku was dry heaving. His vestibular system was struggling to comprehend the acceleration. Radar says... Sonic checked the device Hatsume had given him. He had stolen it back from Deku. 2 blocks east. Underground. The sewer system, Ida noted grimly. Or the subway lines. Underground, my favorite, Sonic groaned. Why is it always a sewer level? They dropped into a maintenance manhole. The air was damp and smelled of rust. So, Deku whispered, lighting the tunnel with a glow from his cowl. This Shigaraki, how did you fight him? You said you canceled his attack. Chaos is energy, Sonic explained, walking casually along a pipe while the others waded through the muck. It's powered by the heart. Positive thoughts, negative thoughts. Shigaraki used anger. I used the fact that I really didn't want you guys to die. Protecting people gives a different kind of boost than hurting them. Like one for all, Deku murmured. Sure, whatever, Sonic stopped. His ears swiveled. Company. The shadows ahead began to ripple. Not the League of Villains. Not Nomus. Robots. Dozens of them. But they weren't the clunky UA practice bots. These were sleek, spherical, and painted with a jagged egg-shaped logo. Eggman? Sonic blinked. No, the design is off. It's a knockoff. The robots activated. Red eyes glowed. Intruder detected. A synthesized voice droned. Initiating Detroit Protocol. Detroit Protocol? Deku asked. Villain bots, Ida analyzed. But who built them? I don't care. Sonic revved his legs, the blue sparks illuminating the dark tunnel. They're blocking the path to the shiny rock. Sonic launched. Sonic Wind! He kicked the air, sending a blade of vacuum pressure down the tunnel. It sliced through the first row of robots like a hot knife through butter. But the robots didn't just explode. They adapted. The surviving units shifted. Their armor plating rotated, reinforcing the strike zones. They deployed shields. Learning algorithms, Sonic noted, bouncing off a shield. Okay, that's annoying. Smash! Deku leaped over Sonic, delivering a 20% Manchester smash to a robot's dome. The metal crunched, but the robot grabbed Deku's leg with a pincer. Recipro extend! Ida blurred past, severing the arm. Nice assist! Sonic laughed. He curled into a ball. Now let me show you the pinball method. Sonic bounced between the tunnel walls, gaining speed with every impact. He became a ricocheting bullet. Ping, pang, crash. He decimated the line of robots, leaving a trail of scrap metal. As the last robot fell, a holographic projection flickered to life from its wreckage. It wasn't Eggman. It wasn't Shigaraki. It was a man with a mustache, but it was thinner, sharper. It was a logo. Detonarat. Re-Destro, Ida gasped. The Meta Liberation Army? Great, Sonic landed, holding a cyan Chaos Emerald he had plucked from the chest cavity of the lead robot. Another faction? You guys really need to organize your bad guys better. It's getting crowded. The cyan emerald pulsed. One down, Sonic tossed it to Deku. Put it in your pocket. Don't touch it with your bare skin if you're angry. Why? Deku asked. Because, Sonic's eyes darkened slightly. You might blow up the moon. Now let's get out of here. I smell smoke. High above Hosu in a corporate penthouse, Rikiya Yotsubashi, Ray Destro, watched the feed cut to static. He adjusted his glasses. Fascinating, Ray Destro smiled. The speed, it is the ultimate liberation. We must acquire the rodent. Fukuoka district, the coastline. The ambient temperature dropped from 24 degrees Celsius to minus 15 degrees Celsius in a radius of 3 kilometers. The Blue Chaos Emerald had not landed softly. It had impacted a pier, embedding itself in a concrete pylon. Its energy leaked not as radiation, but as a thermal vacuum. The ocean water within 500 meters had flash frozen, creating a jagged, unnatural glacier of saltwater ice that spiked toward the sky like crystalline daggers. Wing Hero. Hawks glided over the frozen seascape. His feathers sensed the air currents, or rather the lack of them. The cold was so absolute it was stilling the molecules of the air, creating pockets of aerodynamic dead space. Chilly, Hawks muttered, pulling his jacket collar up. This isn't just ice. It's heavy. He dove. His speed was Mach 0.8. Fast. Precise. He reached for the glowing blue gem pulsating in the ice. Don't touch that, bird. The voice was muffled by a parka, but the intent was sharp. From the ice below, a figure erupted. Getten, the ice manipulator of the Meta Liberation Army, rose on a pillar of frozen seawater. He didn't look like a villain. He looked like an Inuit deity. The Meta Liberation Army claims this catalyst, Getten announced. He raised a hand. The glacier groaned. The blue emerald responded to Getten's affinity for ice. It flared. Suddenly, the ice didn't just move, it evolved. The water molecules aligned into a hyperdense lattice structure harder than diamond. A tsunami of razor-sharp ice surged toward Hawks. Hawks banked hard, losing 3 primary feathers to the shear. Okay, that's not normal ice. Boom! A blast of heat shattered the flank of the ice wave. Katsuki Bakugo plummeted from the sky, propelled by explosions that sounded like anti-aircraft fire. Shoto Todoroki slid down an ice ramp behind him, his left side ablaze. I don't care about your liberation, Bakugo roared, his gauntlets glowing ominously. That shiny rock is mine. I need to prove I'm faster than that blue rat. The ice field. The battlefield was a chaotic mix of thermodynamics. Todoroki's flames battled Getten's emerald-enhanced ice, creating a dense fog of steam that reduced visibility to 0. Bakugo didn't need to see. He moved on instinct and rage. A P-shot autocannon. Bakugo unleashed a barrage of concentrated blasts. They punched holes in the ice, but the glacier regenerated instantly, fueled by the infinite energy of the Chaos Emerald. Getten laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. "This power!" Getten shouted, his parka flapping in the freezing wind. "It sings to me. My meta ability. It feels limitless." Getten didn't just control the ice. He controlled the temperature of the water vapor in Bakugo's sweat. Bakugo stalled. His palms were dry. The nitroglycerin wasn't igniting. It was freezing in his pores. "Damn it!" Bakugo gritted his teeth, landing heavily on a floe. "I can't sweat. It's too cold." "Todoroki!" Hawk shouted, diving to slice through an ice tendril aimed at Bakugo's neck. "Heat him up! He's jamming!" Todoroki switched focus. He unleashed a wave of fire, not at the enemy, but at Bakugo. "Don't you dare pity me half and half!" Bakugo screamed, even as he basked in the flames to thaw his glands. "Just grab the gem!" Todoroki yelled back. "I'll hold him off!" Todoroki unleashed phosphor. His chest glowed. He synchronized his heart rate with the thermal expansion of his ice and fire, creating a cold fire, a paradoxical flame that burned without heat, neutralizing Getten's control. It was a stalemate of elemental gods. And then, the blue emerald pulsed. It wasn't a pulse of ice, it was a pulse of location. The sky tore open. It wasn't a warp gate, it was a technological breach. A massive floating fortress descended from the clouds, uncloaking. It was shaped like a gray egg, bristling with turrets. The logo on the side was unmistakable to Sonic, but alien to the heroes. The egg carrier. "Oh, look!" a voice boomed from loudspeakers that echoed across the bay. "The rodents are fighting over my jewelry." Dr. Evo Eggman, Robotnik, sat in his egg mobile, hovering above the glacier. He adjusted his pince-nez glasses, stroking his mustache. "Getten, was it?" Eggman sneered. "Your ice sculpture is quaint, but I prefer heavy metal." The bottom of the egg carrier opened. Drop protocol, E-Series. 3 robots dropped onto the ice. They were sleek, black and red, with jet engines on their backs. E-103 Delta, E-104 Epsilon, E-105 Zeta, Eggman commanded. "Secure the Chaos Emerald. Eliminate the locals. If the Hedgehog shows up, kill him twice." Hosu City, the rooftops. Sonic stopped running. He skidded to a halt on a water tower, nearly sending Deku and Ida tumbling off the edge. "Sonic?" Deku panted, clutching the cyan emerald in a lead-lined pouch. "What is it?" Sonic looked south. His quills stood on end. "You hear that?" Sonic asked. "Hear what?" Ida adjusted his glasses. "The wind?" "The music," Sonic said grimly. "It just changed to a boss theme." He tapped the comms unit in his ear, courtesy of Hatsume. "Explosion boy, icy hot. You've got a giant flying egg heading your way. Do not, I repeat, do not let the fat man in the mustache get the blue emerald." "Fat man?" Bakugo's voice crackled over the static, accompanied by the sound of explosions. "There's an army of robots and an ice freak here. Get your blue ass down here." "I can't." Sonic looked up. High above Hosu, a yellow glint was descending rapidly. It wasn't falling naturally. It was being pulled. "The yellow emerald," Sonic tracked it. "It's dropping, straight into Tartarus." Deku went pale. "Tartarus?" Deku whispered. "That's the maximum security prison. That's where All For One is." Sonic tightened the straps on his iron soles. "Okay, change of plans." Sonic pointed a thumb at himself. "I'm going to prison. You two, find a way to Fukuoka. Maybe ask the bird guy for a lift." Sonic, you can't break into Tartarus, Ida warned. The sensors, the guns, the automated defenses. Sonic revved his legs. The blue sparks turned into a continuous ring of light. I'm not gonna break in, Ida, Sonic smirked. I'm gonna knock. Boom! Sonic launched vertically. He used the sheer friction of the air to create a ramp, running up into the sky, aiming for the yellow streak falling toward the ocean prison. Tartarus Prison, Level B10. The deep sensors shrieked. Projectile incoming, the guard shouted, spilling his coffee. Mach 5, impact in 3, 2. The yellow chaos emerald smashed through the reinforced roof of the prison. It punched through 10 floors of concrete, steel, and Quirk suppressant fields. It came to rest in the center of the lowest containment block. The lights flickered and died. The emergency red strobes began to rotate. In the darkness, the yellow emerald glowed with a frantic, joyous energy. A man strapped to a chair in a glass cell lifted his head. He had no eyes, only scar tissue. Tubes ran into his throat. All for One smiled. Ah, the symbol of evil wheezed. A gift. The blast doors to the cell melted. Sonic the Hedgehog stood in the doorway. He was covered in concrete dust. He held a piece of a security drone in his hand, spinning it like a basketball. Room service, Sonic quipped. He looked at All for One. You look comfortable. Nice tubes. Very industrial chic. Sonic looked at the yellow emerald resting on the floor between them. I'll take that, Sonic said, stepping forward. Fascinating. All for One's voice was calm, cultured. You are the dimensional traveler. My brother wants you dead, but I am simply curious. All for One's fingers twitched. Air cannon, spring-like limbs, kinetic booster, multiplier. He fired. It wasn't a bullet. It was a wall of compressed air designed to level a city block. In the confined space of the prison cell, the pressure was inescapable. Sonic didn't dodge. He grabbed the yellow emerald. Chaos! The air blast hit him. The prison shook. The ocean outside churned. When the dust settled, the cell was empty. Sonic was gone. The emerald was gone. And All for One was left laughing softly in the dark. He took it, All for One whispered, but he left something behind. On the floor where Sonic had stood was a single golden ring. It spun slowly, losing momentum. All for One extended a finger. He touched the ring. A jolt of energy, pure, chaotic, unrefined, shot into his system. It wasn't a quirk. It was raw power. I see, All for One mused. It connects worlds. Fukuoka. The egg carrier cast a shadow over the battlefield. Bakugo was breathing hard. The E-Series robots were tough. Their armor was reinforced with something that absorbed impact. Getten was unconscious, knocked out by a precise chop from Hawks. But the blue emerald was gone. Dr. Robotnik held it up in the cockpit of his Egg Mobile, cackling. One for the collection, Eggman cheered. Now E-103, initiate self-destruct. Take these heroes with you. The robots began to glow red. Todoroki, Bakugo screamed. Wall! Todoroki slammed his hands into the ice. A massive glacier rose up to shield them. Ka-boom! The explosion vaporized the pier. When the smoke cleared, the heroes were alive, shielded by the ice. But Eggman was gone. The egg carrier was ascending into the clouds, engines roaring. He got away, Todoroki said, wiping blood from his forehead. He stole my kill. Bakugo kicked a chunk of ice, shattering it. And he stole the rock. Hawks landed, clutching his side. We have a bigger problem. That ship, it's heading for UA, Tartarus Prison, 400 meters below sea level. The golden ring spinning on the floor of All For One's cell was not merely a physical object, it was a loop of non-Euclidean geometry, a portal key vibrating at a frequency that ignored the laws of the Quirk singularity. All For One touched it. His quirk, All For One, sought to steal, but you cannot steal from physics. Instead, his body acted as a ground wire. The residual chaos energy, the kinetic potential left by Sonic's touch, flooded his nervous system. It didn't heal him, it overclocked him. The monitors in the command center didn't just redline, they liquefied. "System failure!" a guard screamed, clutching his headset as static burst his eardrums. "The dampeners are offline. The biometric locks they're dissolving." Down in the dark, All For One stood up. The tubes in his throat hissed as he ripped them out. He didn't need the life support. For the next 10 minutes, he was running on pure adrenaline and chaos residue. "Open," he whispered. He didn't use a quirk. He used the ring's connection to the localized space-time. He pulsed the energy outward. The blast doors of every cell in Block B blew outward simultaneously. Muscular stepped out, cracking his neck. Moonfish rattled his teeth. Lady Nagant sat up, her eyes narrowing. Overhaul stared at his stumps, feeling the tremor in the floor. "Gentlemen," All For One's voice projected through the facility, amplified by the intercom system he had just hijacked with his mind. "And ladies, the world has changed. The old laws are broken. There is a new power source, and we are going to take it." He walked toward the surface, the gold ring floating above his palm like a dark halo. "First we kill the symbol, then we catch the hedgehog." Ua High School, the command center. The alarm that rang through the campus was not the standard villain alert. It was the national emergency siren. Principal Nezu stood on his chair. His fur was standing straight up. "Status! The egg carrier has breached the perimeter," Power Loader shouted, his mechanical arms flying across the console. "It's sitting at 10,000 feet directly above the campus. It's dropping things." On the main screen, the belly of the massive airship opened. It didn't drop bombs. It dropped distinct oval-shaped pods. They hit the ground and unfolded. Egg pawns, hundreds of them. Orange robots with lances and shields. Following them were heavier units, egg hammers, massive towering mechs swinging mallets the size of cars. "This is an invasion," Nezu realized. "He isn't raiding, he is conquering." Nezu hit the big red button on his desk. The glass case covering it shattered. Broadcast, Code Genesis. Priority, absolute. To all hero agencies, JP. "Attention all pro heroes." Nezu's voice was calm, but the undercurrent of steel was terrifying. "This is not a drill. We are under siege by an extra-dimensional threat designated Empire. Tartarus has fallen. The villains are loose. The enemy's stronghold is above UA." He paused. "If you can stand, fight. If you can run, get here. We need everyone. This is the final stand." The response. Kyushu region. Mirko kicked a high-end Nomu through a building, landing in a crouch. Her ears twitched as the broadcast hit her earpiece. "Siege? At the school?" She grinned, exposing sharp teeth. "Finally, a real fight." She launched herself north, shattering the pavement. Osaka. Fat gum shielded a group of civilians from falling debris. He looked at Suniter. "Tamaki, get on my back. We're burning all the calories today." Tokyo Central. Best Genus tightened the fibers of his denim collar. He looked at the skyline, where smoke was already rising. "Edge shot. Kamui. The fabric of society is tearing. We must stitch it back together." "Understood." Edge shot vanished, folding his body into a razor-thin line. The wild pussycats. Ryukyu, Gang Orca, Mount Lady. Across the nation, the heroes stopped their patrols. They ignored the petty crimes. They turned toward Musutafu. It was a migration of justice. UA High, the front gates, the UA barrier, the pride of defensive engineering, groaned. Dr. Robotnik hovered in his egg mobile just outside the shield. He held the blue Chaos Emerald. System analysis, Eggman muttered. Hardened steel, layered kinetic dampeners. Boring. He inserted the blue emerald into a slot on his console. Let's see how it handles absolute zero. A beam of sapphire light shot from the egg mobile. It didn't punch the barrier. It washed over it. The temperature of the steel plates dropped to minus 200 degrees Celsius in a microsecond. The molecular bonds became brittle as glass. Knock, knock, Eggman laughed. He pressed a button. A single missile fired from the egg carrier above. Tink. The barrier didn't bend. It shattered. It rained down in millions of frozen shards, leaving the school exposed. Charge! Eggman commanded. The legion of egg pawns surged forward. Class 1A, Class 1B, intercept! Eraserhead's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. The students charged out of the dorms. Howitzer impact. Bakugo led the vanguard, blasting a hole through a squad of egg pawns. Die, you scrap metal rejects! Dark Shadow! Tokoyami screamed. The dark entity expanded, tearing the heads off robots. Momo Yaoyorozu was creating cannons. They have shielding. We need armor-piercing rounds. I got it! Kirishima hardened, acting as a living battering ram against an egg hammer. But there were too many. For every robot they destroyed, 3 more dropped from the sky, and the temperature was dropping. The Blue Emerald's influence was turning the campus into a tundra. The sky above UA, a yellow streak pierced the clouds. Sonic the Hedgehog was falling. He held the yellow Chaos Emerald tight against his chest. He saw the chaos below. The robots, the freezing ice, the students fighting for their lives. Eggman, Sonic growled. You never learn. Sonic! Tails' voice crackled in his ear. Sonic tapped the communicator. Tails, you made it through? The signal is weak, Tails shouted, but I'm reading the energy signatures. Sonic, listen. The blue emerald controls water and ice. The yellow one controls trajectory and lighting. You can use it to override the robot's targeting systems. Got it, Sonic smirked. Time to rewrite the code. Sonic hit the terminal velocity of his fall. He didn't slow down. He aimed for the center of the robot army. Chaos! He clutched the yellow emerald. Blast! He hit the ground. A dome of yellow lightning expanded outward. It wasn't destructive. It was electromagnetic. Zust! 500 egg pawns stopped moving. Their eyes flickered from red to yellow. They spun around. Targeting updated, the robots droned. Hostile identified, Eggman Empire. Sonic stood in the center of the reprogrammed army, electricity arcing between his quills. Hey, Egghead, Sonic shouted, pointing at the sky. I brought some friends, and I stole your toys. Dr. Robotnik looked down, his mustache bristling. You interfering rodent, I have the high ground, I have the blue emerald. And I have the beat, Sonic tapped his foot. From the south, a massive wave of fire announced the arrival of Endeavor. From the west, Hawks and Mirko. From the east, Best Jeanist and the Pussycats. The heroes of Japan had arrived. But from the north, a dark cloud approached, a dust cloud. All For One floated at the head of the escaped convicts. He was flanked by Muscular, Stain, who looked conflicted, and the high-end Nomus. The party is full! All For One projected his voice, silencing the battlefield. He looked at Eggman. He looked at Sonic. I will take the emeralds, All For One declared, and I will take the Empire, and I will take One for All. Sonic looked at Deku, who rushed to his side. Greenie, Sonic said, his voice serious. This is it. Triple threat match. Us versus robots versus the creepiest guy I've ever seen. We have the Cyan Emerald, Deku said, pulling the gem from his pouch. And you have yellow and green. 3 down, Sonic grinned, though sweat trickled down his temple. 4 to go. Let's make it count. Sonic revved his legs. Deku powered up to 45%. The war for the emeralds had begun. The acoustic profile of the battlefield exceeded 180 decibels. It was a cacophony of quirk discharges, mechanical servos whining, and the dull, wet thud of violence. The UA grounds, once a sanctuary of learning, were now a geometry of war. To the east, the pro-heroes formed a phalanx. Endeavor burned a path through the frozen tundra created by the blue emerald, his flames turning the ice into blinding steam. To the west, the League of Villains and the Tartarus escapees cut a swath of destruction. Muscular was laughing, tossing egg pawns like confetti. Above the egg carrier rained laser fire, and in the center, a blue streak connected the dots. Sonic was moving at Mach 4. He wasn't just running, he was managing the chaos. He spin-dashed through the knees of an egg hammer, toppling the 40-ton mech onto a squad of villains. He uncurled, grabbed a falling piece of debris, and threw it to intercept a missile aimed at Mount. Lady. Too slow, too slow, Sonic broadcasted over the battlefield, his voice cutting through the din. Is this the best 2 armies can do? He landed on the shoulder of the prone egg hammer, tapping the yellow Chaos Emerald against his palm. Deku, heads up! Izuku Midoriya, green lightning crackling at 45%, looked up. He was currently juggling 3 egg pawns with Black Whip. Catch! Sonic threw the yellow emerald. It was an insane pass. The emerald traveled at bullet speed. Deku caught it instinctively. Cyan in the left pocket, yellow in the right, Sonic commanded. Combine them. Laser plus float. Go vertical. Deku didn't question the logic. He trusted the momentum. He clutched both gems. The cyan, wisp/laser energy, and the yellow, thunder/trajectory, resonated with One for All. Black Whip, Phantom Current. Deku didn't just float. He became a conduit. Teals and yellows merged into a beam of solid light. He shot upward, dragging a chain of black energy that acted like a lightning rod, frying the circuitry of every aerial drone in a 2-mile radius. Whoa! Uraraka gasped from the ground, shielding her eyes. He's a disco ball of death. The villain flank. Tamura Shigaraki walked through the battlefield. He didn't run. He didn't dodge. An egg pawn lunged at him with a thermal lance. Shigaraki didn't look at it. The red Chaos Emerald floating above his shoulder pulsed. The robot didn't just decay, it unraveled. The atomic bonds holding the steel together simply decided to stop existing. The robot turned into a cloud of iron vapor. Sensei, Shigaraki spoke to the comms in his ear. The doctor is annoying. Can I sink his ship? Patience, Tamura. All for One's voice was smooth, despite the fact that he was currently strangling a pro-hero, native, with a mutated arm while simultaneously holding off Best Genus. We let the heroes weaken the machine. Then we take the core. All for One turned his eyeless gaze toward the egg carrier. Although, the temperature is becoming bothersome. Dr. Eggman, from his perch in the sky, amplified the output of the blue Chaos Emerald. System absolute zero wave. A beam of blue light swept across the villain sector. Muscular froze mid-leap, turned into a grotesque statue of ice and muscle fibers. Moonfish's blades shattered like glass. Dobby's blue flames were snuffed out instantly, his skin cracking from the thermal shock. "My toys!" Eggman cackled over the PA system. "Freeze in the name of the Empire!" The support course. Mei Hatsumi was not fighting. She was typing. She had hot-wired a fallen egg pawn, ripped out its CPU, and connected it to her laptop. Come on," she muttered, her goggles zooming in on the scrolling code. "His firewall is a hexagonal encryption based on 16-bit architecture. It's retro. I love it." "Hatsume!" Power Loader shouted, welding a blast door shut. "We need to evacuate." "No!" Hatsume grinned maniacally. "I'm in. I've got back-end access to the Badnik hive mind." She hit enter. On the battlefield, 300 egg pawns suddenly stopped firing at the students. Their eyes turned pink. "Targeting update," the robots chirped. "Hugs mode engaged." The robots dropped their weapons and began aggressively hugging the nearest villains. A spinner-type villain screamed as he was dogpiled by affectionate robots. "It won't last long!" Hatsume yelled into the comms. "Sonic, the carrier's shield generator is cycling. You have a 3-second window at the exhaust port." "The Ascension," Sonic heard the call. 3 seconds? I could read a book in 3 seconds. He looked at the egg carrier, hovering at 10,000 feet. He needed altitude. "Explosion boy!" Sonic skidded to a halt next to Bakugo, who was trying to blast his way out of a block of ice. "I need a lift." Bakugo snarled, shattering the ice. "Don't order me around, rat." "Fastball special." Sonic crouched into a ball. "Aim for the intake. Maximum yield." Bakugo understood. He hated it, but he understood. He grabbed the blue sphere. He ignited his sweat glands to their absolute limit, creating a localized explosion that cracked the pavement beneath them. "Die!" Bakugo threw Sonic. The velocity was hypersonic. Sonic broke the sound barrier instantly, riding the shockwave of Bakugo's explosion. As he ascended, he saw Todoroki creating an ice ramp to guide him. He saw Endeavor burning a hole through the cloud layer. Sonic uncurled midair. He was a blue bullet aimed at the belly of the beast. He reached the shield generator just as it cycled. Spin attack! He impacted the hull. The Eggman Empire steel was tough, reinforced with carbon nanotubes. But Sonic was vibrating at a frequency that disrupted molecular cohesion. Crunch! He breached the hull. Inside the egg carrier, the interior was a maze of pipes and catwalks. Sonic didn't stop to admire the engineering. He raced toward the bridge. "Intruder alert," the ship's computer droned. "Deploying metal series." A door slid open. A robot stepped out. It wasn't an egg pawn. It was blue. It had quills. It had a jet engine in its chest. Metal Sonic. The doppelganger's eyes glowed a hateful red. It didn't speak. It simply revved its engine. "Metal!" Sonic skidded to a stop. "Long time no see. Did Eggman finally upgrade your RAM? You were looking a little glitchy last time." Metal Sonic launched. The clash was instantaneous. Blue on blue. They moved so fast that to the security cameras, they were invisible. Only the sparking destruction of the hallway walls gave evidence of their fight. Metal Sonic swiped with razor claws. Sonic ducked, spin-dashing into Metal's chest. Metal grabbed Sonic, threw him into a bulkhead, and fired a plasma laser from its chest intake. Sonic backflipped off the wall. "Okay, you got an upgrade, but do you have soul?" Sonic didn't have an emerald. He had given yellow and cyan to Deku. He was running on pure biological speed. "Copycat," Sonic grinned. He grabbed a high-voltage cable from the wall and snapped it. Live wires danced. "Catch!" He whipped the cable at Metal Sonic. The robot caught it, intending to absorb the electricity. "Wrong move," Sonic winked. "That's the plumbing line." It wasn't a power cable. It was a hydraulic line for the ship's coolant system. Liquid nitrogen sprayed Metal Sonic at 3,000 psi. The robot froze mid-step, its joints locking up. Sonic vaulted over the frozen doppelganger. "Cool off, buddy." He kicked down the door to the bridge. Dr. Eggman spun around in his chair. He was holding the blue Chaos Emerald. "You!" Eggman roared. "Get off my bridge!" "End of the line, Eggman," Sonic pointed. "Hand over the rock, and maybe I won't turn your ship into an oversized paperweight." "You think you've won?" Eggman smirked. He pressed a button on his console. "I detected a new energy signature, a massive one, buried deep in the mountains." Eggman pulled up a screen. It showed a location 50 miles away. Jaku Hospital ruins. The ground was shaking. A massive hand, the size of a building, was tearing its way out of the earth. Giganto Makia. And embedded in the giant's forehead, glowing with a malevolent, corrupted light, was the purple Chaos Emerald. "The purple emerald," Eggman laughed. "It responds to loyalty, to servitude, and that beast is the ultimate servant." The ship shook violently. "And now?" Eggman ejected his Egg Mobile from the bridge command slot. "I'm leaving. This ship is set to crash directly into UA High." "What?" Sonic rushed to the console. "Self-destruct in T-minus 60 seconds, the computer announced. Sonic looked out the viewport. Below him was the school, his friends, the heroes. He looked at the blue emerald, which Eggman had left plugged into the drive core to fuel the explosion. If he took the emerald, the ship would lose power and fall like a stone, crushing the school. If he left it, the ship would explode, vaporizing the school. "Choices, choices!" Sonic gritted his teeth. He tapped his comms. "Tails, I need a hack! How do I steer a falling fortress?" Static. "Sonic." It wasn't Tails, it was Momo Yaoyorozu. "I've connected to the ship's schematics through Hatsumi's uplink. The thrusters are vector-based. If you can manually jam the starboard flap, it will veer into the ocean." "Jam the flap," Sonic repeated. "On it." Sonic sprinted out of the bridge, smashing through the glass viewport. He was now on the outside of the falling ship, wind tearing at his quills. He ran down the side of the hull toward the starboard wing. The ground was rushing up. 5,000 feet. 4,000 feet. "Come on!" Sonic reached the massive metal flap. It was locked in a dive position. He pushed. It weighed tons. "I need more juice!" Suddenly, a red streak shot up from the ground. It wasn't a villain. It was Endeavor. The #1 hero flew alongside the falling ship, his face a mask of desperate determination. "Push!" Endeavor roared, slamming his hands against the flap next to Sonic. "Prominence burn!" Sonic and Endeavor, the blue blur and the flame hero, pushed against the aerodynamic drag of a falling city. Creak. Groan. The metal bent. The flap shifted. The egg carrier banked hard to the right. It missed the main campus building by inches, shearing off the top of the UA dorms. It crashed into the ocean bay behind the school with a splash that caused a localized tsunami. Sonic and Endeavor landed on the beach, watching the massive ship sink. Sonic dusted off his hands. His iron soles were glowing red-hot. "Nice assist, Firebeard," Sonic panted. Endeavor stared at the sinking ship, then at the hedgehog. He gave a curt nod. "You are efficient." But there was no time to celebrate. In the distance, the ground rumbled. A roar, deep and terrestrial, shook the tectonic plate. Giganto Makia was awake, and he had the purple emerald. The continental shelf vibrated. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a rhythmic geological heartbeat. Thump. Pause 2.4 seconds. Thump. Sonic stood on the beach of Musutafu, the saltwater spray misting his fur. He looked at the bubbling vortex where the egg carrier had vanished beneath the waves. His heart rate was elevated to 280 beats per minute, not from the exertion of crashing a flying fortress, but from the phobia that paralyzed his higher brain functions. The blue Chaos Emerald was down there, in the dark, in the wet. "I can't do it," Sonic muttered, pacing a trench into the sand. "I run on water. I don't go in water. Water is bad. Water is slow." A splash broke the surface. Tsuyu Asui, Froppy, erupted from the waves, dragging a heavy, glowing object wrapped in her tongue. She landed in a crouch, shivering slightly as the seawater froze on her skin, a lingering effect of the emerald's cryo output. "Kiro!" Tsuyu coughed, releasing the blue Chaos Emerald onto the sand. "It's cold and heavy." "Frog girl!" Sonic scooped up the gem, holding it aloft. "You're a lifesaver, literally. I owe you a chili dog. No, 10 chili dogs." He pocketed the blue emerald. 4 down. But the victory was short-lived. The rhythmic thumping grew louder. The water in the bay began to ripple in concentric circles, matching the footsteps of a titan. "He's coming," Endeavor said, landing heavily beside Sonic. The #1 hero was clutching his ribs. Steering the egg carrier had strained his musculoskeletal structure to its limit. Giganto Makia. The approach. Giganto Makia was not running. He was plowing. The giant cut a straight line through the forest preserve north of UA High. Trees did not slow him. They snapped like dry pasta against his shins. Embedded in his forehead, fused into the rocky carapace, the purple Chaos Emerald pulsed with a deep, violet rhythm. In standard biology, stamina is a finite resource governed by lactic acid buildup and ATP depletion. The purple emerald negated this equation. It provided a perpetual energy feedback loop. Gigantomakia was not just loyal, he was infinite. He could run for 1,000 years. He could destroy mountains until the sun burned out. "Master," the giant moaned, his voice a landslide of gravel. "I smell. Master." He wasn't smelling Shigaraki. He was tracking the resonance of the red Chaos Emerald. UA High, the front lawn, the surviving heroes and students regrouped. The robot army was dismantled, mostly thanks to Sonic's earlier reprogramming and the sheer brute force of the unified hero front. But the mood was grim. All For One stood on a pile of rubble near the main gate. He was untouched. His suit was pristine. The escaped convicts formed a perimeter around him. Shigaraki stood at his right hand, twitching, the red emerald orbiting his fingers. The pawn returns to the board. All For One smiled, sensing the approach of his greatest weapon. "We have to stop him before he links up with Shigaraki," Deku said, landing beside Sonic. His costume was shredded, revealing the scars on his arms. "If Gigantomakia gets here, and they combine the red and purple energies..." "Red is power, purple is infinity," Sonic analyzed, his eyes narrowing. "Infinite power. Yeah, that's a game over scenario." Sonic tightened his gloves. "We need to intercept. How big is this guy? Godzilla size? King Kong size?" "Bigger," Kirishima stepped forward. His unbreakable form was chipped and cracking. "And his skin, it's harder than steel. I couldn't scratch him last time." "Harder than steel?" Sonic smirked. "Good thing I brought a can opener." He tapped the communicator. "Tails, are you there? I need the specs on the purple emerald. Does it have a weakness?" "Sonic!" Tails' voice cut through the static, clearer this time. "The purple emerald enhances physical density. It creates a gravimetric shield. You can't hurt him from the outside. You have to disrupt the energy flow from the source. So I have to touch the forehead." Sonic looked at the horizon. where the tree line was exploding as Giganto Makia breached the city limits. Easy peasy. The intercept. Sonic didn't wait for a plan. He was the plan. He launched. Sonic Boom. He crossed the 3 miles between UA and the approaching giant in 4 seconds. Giganto Makia loomed over the residential district. He was a walking mountain of muscle and rock. He raised a foot to crush a row of houses. Hey, ugly! Sonic ran up the falling foot. He sprinted along the shin, over the knee, and up the vertical cliff face of Giganto Makia's torso. The giant roared, swatting at his chest. The hand moved at subsonic speeds, fast for a giant, but glacial to Sonic. Sonic dodged the slap, running along the giant's forearm, then launched himself toward the face. Homing attack! Sonic became a spinning blue saw blade. He slammed directly into the purple emerald embedded in the forehead. Clang! It was like hitting a diamond wall. Sonic bounced off, vibrating with the shock. Okay! Sonic landed on Giganto Makia's nose. That's hard. Tails wasn't kidding about the density. Giganto Makia went cross-eyed, looking at the speck on his nose. Bug, the giant grunted. He inhaled. Uh-oh, Sonic realized. Giganto Makia exhaled. It wasn't breath. It was a hurricane. The sheer volume of air expelled from the giant's lungs created a wind tunnel that blasted Sonic backward. Sonic tumbled through the air, flailing. Whoa, whoa, whoa! He was caught by a ribbon of tape. Cerro cellophane swung from a lamppost, snagging Sonic midair. Gotcha! Cerro grunted, straining against the momentum. They landed on a rooftop. Thanks, tape dispenser. Sonic shook his head. Okay, brute force is out. He's too thick. We need to crack the shell. We can't crack it, a voice said. Mina Ashido, Pinky, and Eijiro Kirishima, Red Riot, landed on the roof. We have to melt it, Ashido said, her eyes fierce, or break it from the inside. I have a plan, Sonic said. He looked at the blue Chaos Emerald in his pocket, then at the Cyan Emerald in Deku's pocket, who had just arrived with Ida. Water makes rock brittle, Sonic explained. Then we hit him with heat, thermal shock. Then we smash. Operation Landslide. Giganto Makia marched toward UA. He was 500 meters from the gate. All For One watched with anticipation. Now! Sonic screamed. Step 1. The Soak. Shoto Todoroki, on the ground, and Inasa Yorashi, Gale Force arriving from the west, combined their quirks. Inasa created a vortex. Todoroki summoned a massive wave of water. Sonic added the blue Chaos Emerald. The water didn't just splash, it adhered. It coated Giganto Makia in a sphere of pressurized, freezing ocean water. The giant roared as the cold seeped into his rocky hide. Step 2. The Burn. Endeavor! Bakugo! Sonic signaled. Endeavor and Bakugo unleashed hell. Prominence burn meets howitzer impact. The red Chaos Emerald in Shigaraki's hand flared, reacting to the chaos, but Shigaraki held back, curious to see if his pet would survive. The heat hit the wet, freezing rock. Crack. The sound of expanding steam and fracturing stone echoed like a gunshot. Giganto Makia's outer carapace developed a massive fissure, running up his chest to his forehead. Step 3. The Breaker. Sonic grabbed Kirishima. Fastball Special, Round 2. Sonic spun. He held Kirishima, who was in maximum unbreakable mode. Go get him, Red! Sonic threw Kirishima. Kirishima didn't aim for the body, he aimed for the crack. Red Riot! Unbreakable! Kirishima slammed into the fissure. He didn't stop. He dug. He acted as a living wedge, driving deeper into the giant's armor. Now, Sonic! Kirishima shouted from inside the rock. The emerald is exposed. Sonic revved up. He didn't run. He curled. He began to charge a light-speed attack. Sonic! Deku stepped in, offering the yellow emerald. Take the charge. Sonic touched the yellow emerald. Yellow electricity arced around his blue form. He vanished. He reappeared instantly at Makia's forehead. He didn't hit the emerald. He hit the setting. The rock holding the emerald in place. Ping! The purple chaos. Emerald popped out like a loose tooth. Makia froze. The infinite stamina supply was cut. The exhaustion of running for 3 days straight hit him in a single microsecond. The giant's eyes rolled back. Master! He toppled. The earth shook as Makia fell face first into the street, missing the UA barrier by inches. Sonic landed, catching the purple chaos emerald before it hit the ground. 5, Sonic said, breathing hard. He tossed the gem in the air. He looked at All For One. Your move, scary face. All For One didn't look angry. He looked delighted. Marvelous! All For One clapped slowly. You have gathered them for me. 5 emeralds in one place. He raised his hand. The gold ring on his finger began to vibrate. Shigaraki, now! Shigaraki stepped forward. He raised the red chaos emerald. Chaos, Shigaraki rasped, but he didn't say control. Rift. The red emerald turned black. The space behind Sonic, where the students were standing, tore open. Not a portal, a suction, a vacuum into the void. If I cannot catch the hedgehog, All For One stated coldly, I will simply displace his motivation. The rift pulled. It wasn't pulling Sonic. It was pulling Uraraka, Bakugo, and Todoroki. No! Deku lunged, grabbing Uraraka's hand with Black Whip. Let go, Izuku! Uraraka screamed as the gravity of the rift dragged her in. Sonic turned. He saw his friends being pulled into a dimensional tear caused by the corrupted red emerald. He had 5 emeralds. He could stop time. But if he stopped time, the rift would freeze with them inside it, trapping them forever in stasis. He had to make a choice. Save the emeralds or save the kids. Sonic didn't hesitate. Take them! Sonic threw the 5 emeralds, green, blue, yellow, cyan, purple, at All For One. All For One, surprised by the sudden surrender of ultimate power, instinctively caught them with his quirks. The distraction broke Shigaraki's concentration. The rift destabilized. Sonic used that split second. He grabbed Deku, who was holding Uraraka, who was holding the others. He pulled. Snap. The rift closed. The students collapsed on the pavement, safe. But across the battlefield, All For One stood floating in the air. 6 chaos emeralds orbited his body. Red, green, blue, yellow, cyan, purple. Only the white emerald was missing. A noble sacrifice, All For One noted, feeling the godlike power coursing through his veins. The air around him began to warp. Reality was bending to his will. But a foolish one. Sonic stood empty-handed. No emeralds, no rings, just his speed. I didn't sacrifice anything, Sonic grinned, though his eyes were deadly serious. I just put all the eggs in one basket. Makes it easier to smash them. Smash? All For One laughed. I am a god. You're missing one, Sonic pointed to the north. And until you have all 7, you're just a guy with a fancy light show. Sonic looked at Deku. Greenie, we need to go. Now. Go where? Deku stammered, terrified by the power emanating from AFO. Deka City, Sonic said. We have to get the white emerald before he figures out how to use the other 6. Sonic grabbed Deku and Ida. Hang on. We're going supersonic. Boom! Sonic fled the battlefield, leaving UA behind. racing toward the mountains to find the final key to saving the world, or ending it. The sonic boom that trailed behind them was continuous, a ripping of the sky that shattered windows in 3 prefectures. Sonic carried Deku and Ida. He wasn't running on the ground anymore. The friction would have incinerated Ida's armor. He was running on the air pressure itself, kicking off the density of the atmosphere. "Sonic!" Deku screamed over the roar of Mach 5. "He has 6 emeralds. All for One can rewrite reality. Why aren't we dead yet?" "Because he's arrogant," Sonic shouted back, his eyes locked on the mountain range ahead. "And because the emeralds aren't just batteries, they're alive. They don't like him. They're fighting his control. That buys us maybe 10 minutes. 10 minutes to reach Deka City and find the white emerald." Ida calculated, his glasses cracked. "Impossible." "I eat impossible for breakfast," Sonic grinned, though the sweat on his muzzle betrayed his fear. "Usually with chili." UA High School, the ruins of the main gate. The air around All for One distorted, the 6 chaos emeralds orbiting him, red, green, blue, yellow, cyan, purple, hummed with a dissonance that sounded like screaming metal. The Demon Lord floated above the devastation. The heroes were scattered. Endeavor was unconscious. Mirko was buried under rubble. The students were huddled in the crater of the rift Sonic had saved them from. "Now," All for One whispered, turning his eyeless face toward the north. "To collect the final piece." He prepared to warp. With the cyan and yellow emeralds, he didn't need a quirk. He could simply fold space. "Stop!" The voice was weak. It was a rattle in a broken chest, but it carried the weight of an era. Toshinori Yagi stood amidst the wreckage. He was in his skeletal form. Blood dripped from his mouth. He was powerless, a ghost. All for One paused. He floated down, hovering inches from his nemesis. "All Might," AFO chuckled. "Look at you. You are nothing. You have no one for all. No embers. No chaos emeralds. You are just a dying man shouting at a god." "I am not done," Toshinori rasped. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small metallic device. It bore the logo of Shield Industries, modified with Hatsume Heavy Industries markings. Mei Hatsume and Melissa sent this over, just in case. Toshinori pressed the button. "System, Armored All Might, activate." From the debris of a nearby support crate, metal flew, not scrap, high-grade titanium alloy plates, servos, pistons. It wasn't a biological transformation, it was a mechanical one. The armor slammed onto his frail body, hydraulic muscles locked into place. A crimson cape made of energy dispersion fiber unfurled. The helmet slides shut, glowing with blue LED eyes. It was a suit designed to mimic 100% of his prime power, a desperate mechanical echo of the symbol of peace. All for One laughed. "A suit of iron? To fight chaos?" "Not to fight," the synthesized voice of All Might boomed. "To stall." All Might launched. The shockwave cracked the foundation of the school. He didn't have a quirk, but the suit's thrusters delivered 50 tons of force. He punched All for One in the face. Crack! The force field generated by the purple emerald flared. All for One drifted back a few inches, surprised. "Annoying!" AFO scowled. He raised a finger. The red chaos emerald fired a beam of pure destruction. "Detroit, smash!" All Might countered. The suit's right arm overloaded, pistons exploding as it met the beam. He deflected the energy, sending it slicing through the clouds, parting the sky for miles. "You can't ignore me," All Might roared, his suit venting steam. "I am the wall you cannot climb. I am the symbol of peace." All for One's face twisted in irritation. The emeralds were pulsing erratically. The green emerald in particular seemed to dim whenever All for One tried to strike the hero. The chaos energy recognized the heart of a hero, causing a split-second lag in the villain's response time. Fine, All for One growled, the 6 gems spinning faster. I will crush you, then I will kill the hedgehog. Decay City, the center of the liberation. Sonic, Deku, and Ida arrived. Or rather, they arrived at what used to be Decay City. The city was a crater. The buildings were flattened, not by bombs, but by pressure. In the center of the devastation stood a figure, Rikiya Yotsubashi, Rey Destro. But he was unrecognizable. His stress quirk transformed negative emotion into size and power. And right now, clutching the white chaos emerald in his massive black-stained hand, he was experiencing the ultimate stress, the fear of the end of the world. The white emerald feeds on future and psyche. It was taking Rey Destro's anxiety and making it manifest. He was 300 feet tall, a towering shadow of black ink and white energy. "Liberation!" Rey Destro screamed. The sound wave leveled a forest. "The future is silence!" "Okay," Sonic skidded to a stop on the rim of the crater. "He's big. Bigger than the rock guy. Bigger than Makia." "The white emerald," Deku gasped, analyzing the energy. "It's reacting to his stress quirk. It's creating a feedback loop. He's infinite anxiety." "Great," Sonic sighed. "I have to fight a giant panic attack." Sonic looked at his shoes. The iron soles were glowing red. They were melting. "Ida," Sonic said, "I need a boost. And Deku, I need you to make him flinch." "How?" Deku asked. "He's a kaiju." "The bigger they are," Sonic revved his legs, "the harder they fall. Ida, Recipro Turbo. Throw me." Ida nodded. He engaged his mufflers. "Engine, maximum." Ida grabbed Sonic. He spun. He accelerated to Mach 3 in a tight circle. "Go!" Ida released Sonic. Sonic became a blue comet. At the same time, Deku engaged Black Whip and Fajin. He built up kinetic energy. "Smash!" Deku fired an air bullet, not at Rey Destro, but at the ground under Rey Destro's heel. The earth destabilized. The giant stumbled. That split second of imbalance was all Sonic needed. He didn't aim for the head. He aimed for the hand holding the emerald. Sonic vibrated his molecules. He became intangible for a nanosecond, a trick he learned from the Warp Gate incident. He passed through Rey Destro's fingers. Inside the clenched fist, Sonic solidified. He grabbed the white chaos emerald. Yoink! Sonic kicked off the giant's palm, rocketing out of the grip just as Rey Destro crushed his hand closed. "No!" Rey Destro roared, looking at his empty hand. The stress feedback loop severed. He began to shrink rapidly, the ink melting away. Sonic landed on a cliff edge, holding the white chaos emerald. It glowed with a brilliant silver light. It felt cool to the touch. It felt like hope. 7, Sonic whispered. "Well, 1. But it's the one we needed." Suddenly, the air turned cold. The sky above Decay City turned purple. A void opened. "Found you." All for One stepped out of the portal. He was holding the helmet of Armored All Might. The helmet was crushed. Smoke poured from the neck hole. Deku screamed, "All Might!" All for One tossed the helmet aside like trash. It clattered down the cliff face. "He fought well," All for One admitted, adjusting his suit. "For a relic. He bought you 4 minutes, but he is finished." All for One floated down. 6 chaos emeralds swirled around him, creating a halo of absolute dominance. "Hand it over, rodent." All for One extended his hand. "Give me the white emerald, and I will make your death painless." Sonic looked at the crushed helmet. He looked at Deku, who was on his knees, tears streaming down his face, green lightning sparking uncontrollably. Sonic didn't smile. He didn't quip. He clutched the white emerald. "You hurt him," Sonic said softly. The ground beneath him began to crack. Pebbles floated into the air. "You hurt my friends. You hurt this world." The white emerald flared. It connected to Sonic. It called out to the other six. The 6 emeralds around All For One stopped spinning. They began to vibrate. "What?" All For One looked at his orbit. "Obey me." "They don't belong to you," Sonic said. His eyes turned from green to a piercing, glowing gold. "They belong to the server." Sonic raised the white emerald. "Chaos!" All For One fired all 6 emeralds at once. A beam of rainbow-colored annihilation. "A control!" Sonic didn't teleport. He negated. The white emerald unleashed a wave of silver energy that met the rainbow beam. The collision was silent. Everything went white. The collision of energies created a singularity of silence. For 3 seconds, the universe held its breath. The white emerald in Sonic's hand was a singularity of absolute defiance. A pinprick of starlight holding back a tsunami of rainbow-colored destruction. All For One pushed. His suit swelled, the fibers screaming as he poured every stolen quirk, every ounce of malice, into the 6 emeralds orbiting him. "Why?" All For One roared, his voice fracturing under the psychic strain. "I have the majority. I have the power. Why do you not burn?" "Because you're heavy," Sonic gritted out. Sonic wasn't standing on the ground anymore. The pressure had disintegrated the cliff beneath him. He was floating on a cushion of raw will. His gloves were smoking. His fur was bleaching white from the intensity of the energy. "You're dragging them down," Sonic shouted, his eyes locked onto the floating villain. "You treat them like batteries, like quirks to be hoarded, but they aren't yours." Sonic took a step forward, in the air. "They're ours." Behind Sonic, Izuku Midoriya rose from his knees. The sight of All Might's crushed helmet had shattered his heart, but the pieces were reassembling into something sharper, something colder. Black Whip exploded from Deku's back, but it wasn't the erratic, flailing energy of panic. It was a focused, razor-sharp halo of obsidian. "Give them back," Deku whispered. The one-for-all crystal within Deku resonated. The ghosts of the vestiges, Nana Shimura, the first user, All Might, screamed in unison within the metaphysical realm. The resonance hit the Chaos Emeralds. The green emerald, Heart, faltered in its orbit around All For One. The blue emerald, Fluidity, stopped spinning. The yellow emerald, Trajectory, reversed its rotation. All For One felt the change. It was a burning sensation in his mind, like holding a hot coal. "No!" AFO snarled. "I am your master." He tried to clench his fist to force the emeralds into submission. He activated Rivet, spear-like bones, forced activation. He tried to physically drill his will into the gems. The emeralds screamed. "Now, Sonic!" Deku yelled, launching himself into the air. He didn't aim for AFO. He aimed for the space between the emeralds. He acted as a bridge, a conductor for the separation. Sonic threw the white emerald into the sky. "Chaos!" Sonic clenched his fists. He closed his eyes. He didn't think about saving the world. He didn't think about defeating the villain. He thought about the chili dog he was owed. He thought about the wind in his quills. He thought about freedom. The white emerald spun at the apex of its arc. It released a chime, a pure golden note. The 6 emeralds orbiting All For One answered. They rebelled. They tore themselves free from AFO's telekinetic grip with such violence that the villain was blasted backward, his suit rupturing. Red, blue, yellow, green, cyan, purple. They streaked across the sky like returning comets. They converged on the white emerald. All 7 gems began to spin in a perfect circle above Sonic's head. "No!" All for One screamed, firing a massive air cannon. "They are mine!" The air blast hit the circle of gems. It didn't disperse them. It was absorbed. The spinning accelerated. The colors blurred into a single blinding white light. Then the white deepened. It became heavy. It became aurum. The light crashed down on Sonic. Transformation. The atmospheric pressure in Japan dropped. The clouds above the Deku crater evaporated instantly, revealing the stars of the midday space. Golden light erupted from the center of the crater. It wasn't a beam, it was a pillar. It widened, consuming the debris, consuming the shadows. From within the pillar, a figure floated up. His quills were no longer blue. They were turned upward, defying gravity, shining with the luster of molten gold. His eyes were no longer green. They were a piercing, burning crimson. An aura of golden flame flickered around him, crackling with bioelectricity that tasted like ozone and hope. Supersonic. He opened his eyes and he looked at All for One. The demon lord who had faced All Might, who had ruled the underworld for a century, felt a sensation he hadn't experienced since his brother first opposed him. Fear. "You!" All for One stammered, floating back involuntarily. "What are you?" Supersonic crossed his arms. He didn't need to shout. His voice was layered with the harmonic resonance of the universe. "I'm the guy who's gonna wreck your day." Sonic raised a hand. "Ready for round 2? The clash of gods. All for One didn't surrender. He was a creature of absolute ego. Fear turned to rage. "I am the symbol of fear!" AFO roared. His body mutated. The quirks he had stockpiled for decades activated simultaneously. His right arm swelled to the size of a skyscraper, a grotesque amalgamation of flesh, bone, steel, and kinetic boosters. Spring-like limbs. Kinetic multiplier times 100. Hypertrophy. Air cannon. Impact recoil. He became a titan of flesh. Ultimate quirk combination. World ender. He swung. The punch was calculated to crack the tectonic plate. It was a blow that would sink Japan. Supersonic didn't dodge. He flew forward. He didn't use a special attack. He didn't spin. He just flew. He collided with the fist. Clink. The sound was underwhelming. It was the sound of a mountain hitting a star. All for One's massive arm didn't just stop, it shattered. The kinetic energy reversed instantly. The impact wave traveled up AFO's arm, exploding the muscle fibers, shattering the bones, and blowing the kinetic boosters apart. "Arr!" All for One screamed, the pain overriding his senses. Supersonic blurred. He was a golden streak of light, moving faster than the concept of speed allowed. Impact. A kick to the chest that caved in AFO's armor. Impact. A spin attack to the back that severed the sensory quirks. Impact. A punch to the face that cracked the mask of the Demon Lord. Sonic moved so fast that there were a dozen golden afterimages hanging in the air, pummeling the villain simultaneously. All for One was juggled in the air, unable to fall, unable to react. He was a ragdoll in a hurricane of gold. "Deku!" Sonic shouted, pausing midair while AFO floated, dazed and broken. "Finish it!" Izuku Midoriya stood on the cliff edge. He watched the golden god dismantle his nightmare. "Finish it?" Deku asked, his voice trembling. "He's yours," Sonic said, floating beside Deku. The golden aura extended, wrapping around the green boy, protecting him from the radiation of the battle. "He hurt your mentor. He hurt your world. You take the last shot, I'll provide the assist. Sonic grabbed Deku's hand. Transfer, Sonic whispered. Chaos energy flowed into One for All. Gold mixed with green. Deku gasped. The pain of 45% vanished. The breaks in his bones knit together instantly. He felt infinite. He felt super. Golden lightning crackled around Deku's cowl. His hair spiked up, glowing yellow-green. One for all. 1,000,000%, Deku breathed. All for One recovered. He regenerated his arm, screaming in madness. He charged a final blast, a sphere of void energy meant to consume everything. Die together! Sonic and Deku looked at each other. Sonic curled into a golden ball. Deku pulled back his fist. Double boost! Sonic shouted. Sonic launched himself. He spun around Deku's arm, creating a golden vortex of acceleration. Deku punched. United States of Smash! Sonic shot out of the vortex at the moment of impact. The combined attack, the physical force of One for All, and the metaphysical force of chaos hit All for One. There was no explosion. There was simply erasure. The void sphere collapsed. All for One's armor disintegrated. His quirks were stripped away layer by layer. He was blasted out of the sky. He was blasted out of Decay City. He was blasted through the atmosphere. A golden beam of light pierced the heavens, carrying the villain into the upper stratosphere. The aftermath. The light faded. The clouds returned, but they were peaceful cumulus clouds, white and fluffy. In the center of the crater, Sonic floated down. His golden color faded. His quills turned blue. The 7 Chaos Emeralds drifted gently to the ground, dull and drained. He landed on his feet, staggered, and sat down hard. Okay, Sonic panted, giving a thumbs up. That was a workout. Beside him, Deku collapsed, the golden energy fading from his veins. He looked at his hands. They weren't broken. We did it? Deku whispered. Sonic looked up at the sky. There was a twinkling star where All for One had been ejected. Yeah, buddy, Sonic grinned, closing his eyes. We did it. Suddenly, a shadow fell over them. It wasn't a villain. It was a helicopter, a news chopper, and behind it, a transport ship. And descending from the ship, carried by a gravity lift. Armored All Might, or what was left of him. The suit was trash, missing an arm and a leg. The helmet was gone, but the man inside, Toshinori Yagi, was breathing. He was battered, broken, and unconscious, but alive. Deku sobbed. It was a sound of pure relief. Sonic smiled. He reached into his quills and pulled out a single, slightly squashed chili dog he had been saving for an emergency. Victory snack, Sonic mumbled. He took a bite, and then he passed out. 10 minutes prior, the Sea of Japan. An escape pod bobbed in the turbulent waves. It was shaped like a giant egg, polished to a mirror sheen, rocking gently in the wake of the sinking egg carrier. Inside, Dr. Ivo Robotnik stared at a portable monitor. The screen displayed the telemetry from Decay City. The graph was a vertical line. Infinite energy. He saw the 7 dots on the radar converge. He saw the spectral analysis shift from rainbow to golden aurum. Eggman froze. His hand hovered over a button labeled Re-engage. He sighed, a long, weary sigh that deflated his chest. He slumped back in his leather seat, pinching the bridge of his nose. I know that glow, Eggman muttered to the empty pod. I know exactly what happens next. The hair goes up. The eyes turn red. He starts flying around at light speed, smashing my multi-billion-dollar investments like they're piñatas. On the screen, the golden pillar of light erupted. Nope, Eggman said. He pressed a different button, a blue button labeled Dimensional Retreat. I am not dealing with that today. I have a headache, and I'm out of missiles. The escape pod hummed. The Chaos Emerald he had used to power his ship, the blue one, had left a residual charge in the pod's capacitors, enough for one trip. "You're their problem now, Sonic," Eggman grumbled as the pod began to vibrate, phasing out of reality. "Enjoy the victory lap. I'll be back in Green Hill Zone before you can say chili dog." Zorp. The pod vanished, leaving only a ripple in the water. Decay City, the crater. The silence was heavy. It was the kind of silence that feels physical, pressing against the eardrums. The pro-heroes stood at the rim of the crater, Endeavor leaning on Shoto for support, Hawks sitting on a piece of rebar, missing half his feathers, the students of Class 1A covered in dust and grime. In the center, the golden light had fully faded. Sonic stood up. He dusted off his knees. The 7 Chaos Emeralds lay scattered around him. They were dark, looking like ordinary cut glass, gray, dull, sleeping. "Sonic!" The shout came from Tenya Ida. The class rep, abandoning all decorum, slid down the crater wall, followed closely by Uraraka and the rest of the class. "You..." Ida stopped, adjusting his glasses, which were currently held together by tape. "That was reckless, illogical, and absolutely magnificent." Sonic grinned, giving a thumbs up. "Just a typical Tuesday, Specs." Deku sat up. He looked at his hands. The one-for-all lightning was gone. The superpower had faded, leaving only the familiar hum of his own quirk. "He's gone," Deku whispered. "All for one. I can't feel him anymore. The danger sense, it's quiet." "He got punted into orbit," Sonic pointed a thumb at the sky. "He'll come down eventually, probably in a few pieces. I'd recommend a really strong jail cell, maybe one without windows." A medical transport landed nearby. Medics rushed out with a stretcher for All Might. The skeletal hero raised a weak hand, giving a thumbs up to the students before being loaded into the chopper. "He's alive," Deku sobbed, burying his face in his hands. "Hey!" Sonic walked over. He crouched down in front of Deku. Sonic didn't like tears. He didn't do heavy emotional moments. He poked Deku on the forehead. "No waterworks, Greenie. You saved him. You threw the punch." "But you gave me the power," Deku wiped his eyes. "I just gave you a boost," Sonic winked. "The engine was already there." Sonic stood up. He began to gather the gray emeralds. He stuffed them into his quills, the subspace pocket. "What are you doing?" Uraraka asked. "Packing up," Sonic said. "These rocks are dangerous. If I leave them here, someone else will try to use them. And honestly, your world is crazy enough without magic gems turning people into kaiju." He picked up the last one, the green emerald. It gave a faint, weak pulse. Besides, Sonic looked at the sky, where the dimensional rift caused by the battle was slowly closing. "I think my ride is leaving." The rift shimmered. Through the tear in space, they could see a glimpse of another world. A world of checkerboard soil, loop-de-loops, and palm trees. "You're leaving?" Kirishima asked. "But we didn't even have a feast or a training montage." "Gotta run," Sonic stretched his legs. "Eggman bailed. If I don't get back, he might try to turn my house into a parking lot." He looked at Class 1A. "You guys are all right. A little dramatic, a little obsessed with rules, but you've got heart." He looked at Bakugo, who was standing with his arms crossed, looking away. "Even the angry Pomeranian." "Die!" Bakugo shouted, but there was no heat in it. Sonic turned to Deku. "Izuku Midoriya." It was the first time Sonic had used his full name. "You're gonna be the best," Sonic said seriously. "Not because of the power, but because you didn't hesitate. Keep running." Sonic revved his legs. The familiar blue wheel began to spin. Wait! Deku reached out. Will we see you again? Sonic stopped. He looked back over his shoulder. That trademark grin, cocky, free, and invincible, flashed one last time. The world's round, kid, Sonic laughed. If you run fast enough, you eventually end up in the same place. Shwoom! Sonic launched. He hit the rift at Mach 1. He didn't look back. He vanished into the tear between dimensions. The rift snapped shut. The wind died down. Deku stood in the center of the crater, staring at the empty space where the blue blur had been. In his hand, he felt something hard. He opened his palm. It was a ring, a single golden ring. It wasn't spinning. It was solid, heavy. Deku closed his fist around it. He felt a faint hum, a rhythm, the sound of running feet. Yeah, Deku whispered, looking at the horizon where the sun was beginning to set over a saved Japan. Keep running. Somewhere in Green Hill Zone, a blue streak shot out of a portal and landed on the grass, rolling to a stop. Sonic stood up, took a deep breath of the clean air, and stretched. Home sweet home, Sonic sighed. Sonic! A twin-tailed fox flew down from the sky, landing in a tackle hug. Tails, Sonic laughed, patting his friend on the head. Easy, buddy, I'm intact. You were gone for 3 days. Tails checked his watch. I was tracking the energy signatures. Did you find the emeralds? Did you beat Eggman? What was the other world like? Sonic pulled the dull emeralds out of his quills and tossed them to Tails. Long story, Sonic grinned, looking at a nearby chili dog stand that was thankfully open. But let's just say, the food was okay, the robots were cheap, and the heroes wore way too much spandex. Sonic revved his feet. Now come on, race you to the beach. Sonic took off. The story was over, but the run never ended. The narrative thread has reached its terminus. The current timeline stabilizes, and the audio transmission ends here. But the portal never truly closes. It only waits for the next divergence. To ensure you are present when reality fractures again, you must align with the signal. Subscribe to What If Portal Comics. It is the only way to guarantee your passage into the next chapter. The archives are vast, and another world is already waiting for your observation on the screen. The next jump is yours to make. For now, let the static fade. Enjoy the music in this moment of stillness while you decide your next destination. See you in the next reality.